Thank you, everybody. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's council meeting on the 27th of September 2023. Can I ask members, when speaking, to speak directly into the microphone? This will enable members and members of the public to hear. Can I remind members to place their mobile phones to silent and to stand where possible when speaking? We will be using the new electronic voting system this evening for report and motion recommendations. Can I remind members of the council meeting, at the end of the council meeting, until I have risen to conclude the meeting? Can I also remind those members who wish to speak this evening to keep their hands up and until they're acknowledged by the Chief Executive Officer. Before I progress to this meeting, may I take this opportunity to remind the Chamber that the meeting is being live streamed and we welcome the members of the public in the gallery, watching and listening to the council meeting tonight. I would also like to remind all members to observe the council's adopted code of conduct for councillors, which is expected of all members. I would now like to ask the Reverend Darren Barlow to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Over the past week or so, we've been remembering the 83rd anniversary of the Battle of Britain. In September 1940, the Luftwaffe launched two huge bombing raids on London. Smaller formations of German planes were also planned to attack Portland and Southampton. The Luftwaffe had introduced a significant change of tactics in that they'd switched away from attacking RAF bases and radar installations to focus on bombing London using the River Thames as their guide. And so passing our borough of Thurrock, and of course just at the bottom of the high street we can see the river this evening. On the 15th of September 1940, the then Prime Minister Winston Churchill visited RAF Uxbridge, the headquarters of Number 11 Group Fighter Command. Churchill later described what he saw at 11 Group. Presently, the red bulbs showed that the majority of our squadrons were engaged. In a little while, all our squadrons were fighting, and some had already begun to return for fuel. All were in the air. The lower line of bulbs was out. There was not one squadron left in reserve. During both of the raids that day, the RAF managed to scatter many of the German bomber formations. This meant that when the surviving bombers did drop their loads, they fell over a much wider area and so were less harmful. Thousands of Londoners stood in the streets below watching the battle rage over their heads. The 15th of September 1940 marked a clear and decisive defeat for the Luftwaffe. Statistically and military, the Luftwaffe expected to have wiped out the RAF within a week, but that wasn't the case. As a result of the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe lost 1,733 planes, and the RAF about half that number, a total number of many who lost their life. The Luftwaffe subsequently abandoned the daylight bombing of London on the 30th of September, and although nighttime bombing continued until May 41. Winston Churchill, in tribute to the pilots of the RAF, said those famous words, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." And so during September, the nation pauses to remember and give thanks for those few who probably saved Britain and our borough of Thurrock from enemy occupation and probable defeat. 83 years is a long time, and so there will be a diminishing number of people across Thurrock who have their own memories of the Battle of Britain and the wartime bombs that also fell in this area. I've been speaking to a number of people in their 90s who have lived all their life in Thurrock, and they still have very clear memories of those events. And so it's all the more important that we remember and give thanks for the bravery of those who've gone before us. So let us pray. We thank you, O God, for our country and for all the blessings which are ours today. We thank you too for the people of past years who have fought to give us freedom, which we now enjoy and cherish. We pray for those who still suffer because of war and for those with bitter memories. Grant that the day may soon come when all people shall live to learn together in peace and harmony. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Barlow. I intend to move a motion without notice under council procedures and rules this evening, paragraph 16.1n, to suspend council procedure, rule 14.19, to allow all public and members' questions to be heard and answered. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Yeah, that's right. I would ask all members to make sure that you behave in a business-like fashion. Do not filibuster or talk across the chamber. I may call for a comfort break if it appears necessary during the meeting, in case this goes on for quite a long time tonight. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Duffin, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Onijola, and Councillor Rigby. Leader, is there any more? Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, both Councillors Watson and Morris Cook are delayed at work but will join us as soon as they're able.
Thank you. Right, I now move to item 2. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the 20th... Councillor Spate.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just to be you just called a motion. There was a proposer and a seconder, but as far as I was aware, there was no vote, was there? Do we not have to do that to make it legal?
I don't think so, but if you'd like to vote, all those who'd like to me to have to prolong the time so all the questions are asked by the members of the public and everyone else, can you all please raise your hands? Yeah, thank you. I think that looks anonymous. Thank you. Anonymous? Anonymous. Sorry. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the 26th of July 2023 Council be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Thank you, Leader. Is any member in disagreement with the accuracy of those minutes? Thank you. These minutes are approved. Item 3, items of urgent business. I have not agreed to any urgent items of business this evening. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to be made, please? No. Announcements on behalf of the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. Before I invite the Leader of the Council to speak, I would like us all to take a moment and remember Thurrock's fallen of World War II, as printed on page 7 of the agenda. Ernest Hills, William H. Richardson, Morris F. Spencer, Albert Williamson, Gerald A. Warren, Eric Edward Coping, Gordon A. Corral, S. Kenneth, Ernest V. Farr, W. Peed, George A. Wareham, Leonard Gather, James H. Gillingham, Frederick Herbert, Kenneth J. Hart, Edward G. Hughes, Leslie W. Hockley, Eric Beard, and Frank Widdocks. I will now invite the leader to make his announcements this evening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I was honoured this month to join yourself and other members of this chamber to lay a wreath at the Grays Memorial to commemorate the Battle of Britain. Also, this week is Social Care Week, and I was pleased to have dropped in, along with many members here tonight, into the session that's in Committee Room 2 to meet some of our fantastic carers and foster children. I'd like to encourage all members as well to book their slot with the Public Realm Directorate for its open day on Friday the 6th of October. Having previously been out with our bin crews, I can highly recommend spending time with all our officers to get a better understanding of their roles. I'd like to update members also that since April 2023, we've cleared 1,314 fly tips. We've litter cleaned from our streets 1,024 tonnes of litter. Household waste that went to recycling is around just over 11,500 tonnes. Potholes filled 2,025. That's more than 98% in the agreed time frame. Plus, we've also, and I saw this for myself when I went out with the team, we've filled potholes by the velocity jet patching during August and September to the total of 2,577.
Thank you, Leader. I will now, on item 6, questions from members of the public. I will now take questions from members of the public. 10 questions have been submitted this evening and accepted by the monitoring officer. These are set out on pages 23 and 24 of our agenda. For the benefit of the recording of this meeting, I would ask that the questioner read out their question when asked to do so. I would also inform the questioner that any supplementary questions they may ask should not take a form of a statement and must be related to the original question or the answer that is given. So, firstly, good evening, Mr. Atkins. Please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your question.
So when's that? Should we done it for now? What page is that on?
Good evening. Can the portfolio holder tell me, does the Council recognise the United Nations
Excuse me,
Convention of
Mr.
Rights of the Child?
Atkins.
Yes.
Councillor Byrne, could you turn off your microphone? Thank you.
Sorry. Can the portfolio holder tell me, does the Council recognise the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Atkins, for your question. The United Kingdom implements the United Nations Charter on the Rights of a Child with the Children Act in 1989 and the Children Act 2004, and the Thurrock Council works within this framework.
Thank you. Mr. Atkins, do you wish to propose a supplementary question to the portfolio holder?
Yes, please. As portfolio holder, I assume you're aware of Articles 6, 23 and 27 of the Convention. With that in mind, why are so many neurodivergent children being denied their basic human rights? Families living in high-rise buildings being told to place extra locks on windows and doors instead of being offered alternative suitable accommodation. It makes these children prisoners in their own homes.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins, for your supplementary question. There are a number of articles in the Act. I believe it's 53 off the top of my head. If there are particular cases, I would like you to reach out to me and help me with that. I do believe this housing question would have been better answered by my colleague. But obviously many different agencies take the views, and we as a provider do look at what are the needs of a child, and we do have a statutory duty to care for this child, and we will we will do that. So if you do have a particular case, please do get in touch with me, and thank you for your question.
I will do, thank you, and there's 54 articles. Regards.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Good evening. Mr. Nixon, please make your way to the public speaker microphone and then read out your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the planning portfolio holder commit to supporting smaller, locally led planning applications going forward, as these create work for local people, and bearing in mind how low the housing completion figures are, ensure that any locally led application that seeks to deliver new homes, irrespective of the numbers involved, is called to committee to be debated fairly?
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Nixon, for your question. I can assure you that I will support all good quality planning applications which align with the Council's ambition to grow Thurrock and our local economy, providing they comply with planning policy. Our planning process also supports those aims, but must judge every application, whether locally led or otherwise, and determine whether they satisfy the relevant guidance. I cannot agree that all residential planning applications should automatically come before the Planning Committee for determination. It's entirely appropriate that smaller applications or those of less significance be decided under delegated powers in order that the Planning Committee does not become overburdened and is able to focus on key planning decisions. In each case, however, I would expect due process to be upheld and the same rules be applied. I hope it will comfort Mr. Nixon to know that the Council has agreed that the Local Government Association's Planning Advisory Service should undertake a peer review of our planning service. This will include a review of delegations and committee decisions, and we have committed to implement the findings of the review. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon, would you like to propose another question? A supplementary, sorry.
Yes,
Thank
please. A complaint was raised recently about planning matters, part of which related to multiple waived planning fees for an applicant who is friends with a councillor. Somewhere between the initial response from the apprentice in the complaints team and the response from Mr. Bradbury, that particular part of the complaint has been swept under the carpet. Will the portfolio holder, for whoever's in charge of fraud, ensure that the counter fraud officer contacts me first thing in the morning?
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would stop short of saying I can guarantee that he will call you first thing in the morning, because I don't think I have that authority. But what I'm happy to say to you is, if you want to give me further details of your complaint and explain why you think it hasn't been properly investigated, I'm more than happy to take that forward. You at least deserve an answer, even if perhaps some of the things you're alleging aren't substantiated. I do agree that you should at least have an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Nixon. Would you like to make your way back to the public gallery? Question 3. Good evening, Mr. Perrin. Please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your question. Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you tell me where the provision of cutting, maintenance and protection of grass verges and green spaces stands in the pecking order of council provided services, particularly regarding grass verges and green spaces located on council housing estates?
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Leader, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Perrin, for your question. The Council's clean and green services are still maintaining the borough's parks, public open spaces and grass verges. There is a service agreement level between housing and environment that sets the frequency for the maintenance of communal green spaces on housing land, and this has not changed.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Perrin, would you like to propose a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. It is well recorded that I have raised the issue of the protection of grass verges and green spaces many times with councillors and have received little by means of a constructive response. Although I have asked that all grass verges and green spaces be properly protected, I have concentrated on the disgraceful condition of the grass verge on the corner of Broxburn Drive, Afton Drive, caused by parked vehicles. The vandalism of this grass verge has been ongoing for many years. I make no apology for saying that I have no faith in anything councillors say regarding the protection of grass verges. No doubt there are selected areas in the borough where grass verges and green spaces are beautifully maintained and protected. There appears to be a lower standard of maintenance and protection of grass verges and green spaces in areas where there is a concentration of council rented housing as compared with the standard applied to areas such as Brandon Groves and North Stifford. Where are the flowers in grass verges and green spaces in Broxburn Drive and other such areas? I am sick and tired of being patronised by councillors who, whilst agreeing with me, especially at the election time, that the state of the unprotected grass verge on the corner of Broxburn Drive, Afton Drive, is a blot on the landscape and unacceptable.
Mr. Perrin, I'm sorry, you're out of time. Oh, unless you're only going to be...
I have just one more paragraph to say.
Well, make it a very, very short one, Mr. Perrin.
Yes. So I ended on Afton Drive is a blot on the landscape and unacceptable, and nothing has been done to improve it. Will you now commit the council to take action sooner rather than later to properly protect this grass verge, thus preventing drivers from parking their vehicles on it?
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Leader, would you like to
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
respond?
Thank you, Mr. Perrin, for your question. Mr. Perrin, I know because we've spoken about this before, and I will give you a public assurance now that I will ask officers to look into that particular junction and see if there is something that we can do again. I do take issue slightly with your assumption that we take care of different areas of the borough with different ways. Councillor Shinnick is laughing. She used to be, before she went on the chicken run, the councillor in South Ockenden, and she would know the Flowers Estate. The Flowers Estate just recently was a prototype for a new way of the council working with residents. We had residents and council officers out clearing the estate, removing weeds, cutting back grass, cutting back hedges, litter picking, a whole host of things that was doing, and that is primarily a social housing area. So we take seriously the maintenance of all of the borough, regardless of whether it's social housing or private housing. And I hope that gives him some reassurance. And again, I'll repeat, I will ask officers to look at the particular junction that he's referring to see if there is something that we can do to stop people from parking on those verges.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Perrin, if you'd like to make your way back to
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say, with regard to the Reverend Barlow's comments, I was one of the children that lived through the World War II and experienced the issues that he highlighted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Right. Good evening, Ms. Ramadeen. Please make your way to the speaker microphone and read out your question, please.
It's pronounced Ramdini. It's a difficult one.
I apologise.
Could the Cabinet members please explain how they considered each point of their older persons charter when making the decision to withdraw the 374 and 11 bus services? making it extremely difficult for elderly taxpayers in those rural locations to maintain their independence and dignity.
Thank you for your question. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms Randimi, for your question. Madam Mayor, I would start by saying that whilst the Older Persons Charter is something the Council signed up to some years ago, it is, in my view, an aspirational document rather than one which binds the Council in its decision-making. The overriding consideration must always be whether a service is sustainable and in the interests of the taxpayer. The Charter does not compel the local authority to fund external services, regardless of whether they place a burden on council budgets. Nevertheless, I'm pleased to advise that the Council always considers the diversity and equality implications of its decisions, and there was no exception here. Indeed, this is a legal requirement. In preparing for a decision on the withdrawal of these services, Thurrock Council undertook a robust review and consultation with impacted communities. Further scrutiny of the decision was undertaken in July of this year as a result of the call-in process and in line with the Council's constitution. The consultation was designed to be as accessible as possible for all members of the community, and full details of the responses were given in the reports presented to the respective Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet. It should be noted that the consultation was praised by members from across the political divide for the way in which it was conducted. These measures helped to comply with Parts 1, 2 and 3 of the Charter for older people. Parts 5, 6 and 9 of the Charter were given consideration within the detail of the report and identified in the Communities Equalities Impact Assessment. Furthermore, Madam Mayor, Thurrock Council sought legal advice which confirmed that the Council does not have a statutory duty to provide a bus service to communities. Section 63 of the Transport Act 1985 places a duty on councils to provide services which it considers appropriate, which cannot be met by the commercial sector. This, however, does not place a statutory duty on the council to provide any service which is not met by a commercial party. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Ms Ramadeen Denny. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. In my follow-up question, so regarding particularly points 4 and 6 of the Older Persons Charter, your decision to target the elderly taxpayers, and I'll call them taxpayers, seeing as you use that word, of East Tilbury, West Tilbury, Linford and Horndon, taking away their independence and possibly forcing them into financial hardship if they need to take taxis to essential hospital appointments, for example, is a direct consequence of the disastrous financial mismanagement of taxpayer funds by this council. We've got 75 specific real-life examples of the detrimental effects of your decision to purposely isolate taxpayers in these communities. We collected those in less than 10 days, not the 12 weeks you had, and I'm sure we could have collected dozens more. This is something you obviously didn't bother to do. I mean, some of those 75 people are sitting here today, which I notice you're not even looking at them. You've actually condemned them to isolation and loneliness, endangering their mental and physical health. So my question is, why has this committee gone back on Councillor Jeffrey's public pledge to protect vulnerable people and services, and who are going to be your next targets to cut your budgets?
Thank you. Councillor Maney, would you like to reply, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, if I could start by reminding you that actually these are not council services. We have been funding a private operator to provide these services, but the council is not a public transport provider. You say that the decision was taken because of the financial situation the council finds itself, and I have to tell you that I instructed the review of these services before the council's financial situation was known. And when I saw the eye-watering amounts of taxpayers' money that we were using to fund these services, and when I actually saw after the review how much more would be required to keep them going, it was always in my mind to recommend to Cabinet that we seek to withdraw the services. So I can assure you it wasn't solely based on the council's financial situation. I genuinely believe that this council doesn't have is not committed to forevermore fund services which are simply unsustainable. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. If you would like to make your way back to public gallery. Good evening, Ms Hadley. Please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your question. Thank you.
Why are elderly residents in East Tilbury being discriminated against? Every other elderly resident in Thurrock has access to free travel, except those in East Tilbury, West Tilbury, Linford and Horndon.
Thank you for your question. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the reasons given in my previous answer, to which I refer you to now, Mrs Hadley, I do not accept that the Council has discriminated against any member of our communities. The advice given to Cabinet was that its decision was legally compliant from a diversity and equalities perspective, and there was a very long period during the consultation and calling intervals in which anyone could have challenged this. I do understand that the decision has had implications for a small number of people, including older residents in some parts of the borough. I regret this, but do not agree this amounts to discrimination. In respect of why do other residents in other parts of the borough have access to public transport, that's because people there use them in sufficient numbers for those services to be commercially viable. We don't subsidise those services, they sustain themselves because people use them.
Miss Hadley, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
As concessionary bus passes are not accepted on trains and in taxis, why do you think it's acceptable that taxpayers in East Tilbury, West Tilbury, Linford and Horndon have been purposely isolated and cut off from essential services, i.e. hospitals, when all other Thurrock elderly and disabled taxpayers have access to these facilities?
Thank you. Councillor Maney, your reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I answered some of that in my earlier answer. I won't go over that, but I can only repeat that if people use public transport in sufficient numbers, it will sustain itself. It's not the council's responsibility to evermore fund those services. There isn't really much more I can say to that, Madam Mayor. I do understand the decision was a difficult one, but in the face of all the evidence, we can't just keep saying that the evidence is inconvenient, but we must insist that the council continues to fund these services when they were placing ever more of a pressure on council budgets. I don't think it's fair to us taxpayers in other parts of the borough to continually pay for a service they don't have access to or don't use. When in actual fact, this is from the cost of those services are just simply unsustainable. I mean, that was explained over and over again. I think at Cabinet, it came to Cabinet twice, and all the facts were behind the reasons for our additions were explained. And whilst we're never going to agree on the outcome, I don't think anyone can deny whether when you look at the cost of those services, they were just simply unsustainable.
Thank you. If you'd like to make your way back to public gallery, thank you. Sorry, Ms. Kuzner, would you please make your way to the public microphone? Thank you. If you'd like to ask your question.
Thank you. On the same bus service, how are students supposed to get to and from Palmer's College with no footpaths along the lanes? This would mean either extra expenses on train and bus fare to get there or reduced hours for parents who do work to accommodate this. What if those parents don't drive?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms Kuzner, for your question. I do not believe it is my role or the Council's to instruct people on personal aspects of their lives, such as how they should transport themselves to work or education. That said, the majority of students living in areas previously served by the free supported bus service will be in a...
Excuse me, can I just stop you, Councillor Maney? It is always difficult to hear, and if you're all making a noise in the public gallery, I know this is an emotive subject. I know it's an emotive subject, but would like to hear the answer, please. Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The majority of students living in areas previously served by the free supported bus services will be in a comfortable cycle of Palmer's College. Indeed, from Ms Kuzner's home to Palmer's College, the distance is 3.4 miles and amounts to an 18-minute cycle or thereabouts. Better...
Please, in the public gallery, could you please be quiet? Because otherwise we don't hear the questions. And there are people listening online who'd like to be able to hear? Councillor Maney, would you continue, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try one more time. Students may also wish to travel by train from East Tilbury Station to Grays, from where it's an even shorter cycle and well within walking distance. As a former Palmer's College student myself, I made this walk weekly and no harm did it do me. Dare I say also that from the age of 16, most individuals in the UK can ride certain motorcycles, and this was indeed a mode of transport that several of my fellow students opted to utilise when we attended Palmer's College. I appreciate that for some students there may be a good reason why they cannot walk, cycle or use other means of transport for accessing the college. Where this is for reasons of disability or special needs, and they may be eligible for home-to-school transport, more information can be found on the Council's website. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Ms Kuzna. Do you wish to propose a second supplementary?
I do.
Thank you.
Firstly, the students have to stay in education now till they're 18, so it's not really a choice. But why was Palmer's Transport Department not informed of the council's choice to scrap the local bus service? They were not aware when we had our parents' evening in June. They only provide a bus service for local Thurrock students from Purfleet. Palmer's this is. They cater for Upminster and Hornchurch, when if they had known we were scrapping our local bus service for our own residents, they may have provided a service for us and not Havering.
Thank you, if you stay there. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I perhaps would have thought that if students were using the services in sufficient numbers, they would have known from the consultation exercise, which included paper documents on those buses, that they would have informed the college. Perhaps if Palmer's wasn't aware that the council was considering this decision, it just is further evidence, and not a great deal of students were using those services. If they were, why didn't they communicate that to the college authorities? I said in one of my previous answers that we carried out a very robust consultation exercise. I think we went to every means possible to communicate to people in the community and others that we were looking at these services. And I regret that the college doesn't seem to have picked up on that consultation, but I don't think there's much more we could have done. To be clear, Madam Mayor, the council didn't cut the services. We withdrew our subsidy. If the operators wish to continue operating the services on a commercial basis, they're at liberty to do so. And even now, any operator, if they wanted to, can install a service. It's not for the council to tell companies where they can run buses. They're entirely free to do that at any time. As I say, we just merely withdrew the subsidy. We haven't terminated the services.
No, Councillor. Ms Gunn, would you like to make your way forward to the public speaking microphone?
Save our bus service. Why didn't you approach other bus companies when the proposed figure from NIBS seemed to be too expensive for you to consider?
Thank you for your question. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did approach other bus operators, and so did the council. Unfortunately, the options put forward by other operators either didn't provide the level of service that was required, or they were financially unviable. I myself had a meeting with one of the biggest public transport bus operators in Thurrock, and I asked quite clearly whether they would be able to get services in on a commercial basis, and they were simply uninterested. So I can assure you we did approach other operators, but there wasn't the option to install alternative services.
Ms Gunn, would you like to propose a supplementary question?
Questions, thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to return to public gallery? Good evening, Ms Franklin. Please make your way to the public speaker microphone and read out your question. Thank you.
How does Thurrock Council foresee those who had been reliant on the bus service, for whatever reason, being able to reach the medical hubs to receive their COVID jabs?
Thank you for the question. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms Franklin, for your question. I respectfully refer you to the answer I gave to Ms Cusner earlier this evening in respect of how residents transport themselves in their daily lives. The provision of health services, including COVID-19 vaccinations, is within the remit of the National Health Service, and it is better placed to consider matters such as accessibility. The Council does believe that good public transport is vital, particularly when it comes to improving access to health services. Our transport strategy and emerging local plan will seek to strengthen this. However, there's no denying that if the communities which they serve opt not to use them in sufficient numbers, meaning that the services cannot be sustained on a commercial basis, they will likely be jeopardised, unless, of course, the current or future Westminster governments take steps to provide continuous means of alternative funding or support. Thank you, Madam.
Ms Franklin, would you like to propose a supplementary? Thank you.
Yes, please. As Thurrock Council itself acknowledges in its consultation response, the buses provide a key community, social and well-being benefit to the communities they serve. Now that the 11, 374 and 265 services have been withdrawn, how do councillors perceive people in those communities will access vital services?
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I refer you to the answer I gave a moment ago. It is not for the Council to instruct or advise people how they transport themselves in their private lives.
Thank you. Ms Franklin, if you'd like to make your way back. Good evening, Ms Hatler. Hattle? Yes. If you'd like to make your way forward.
Good evening, it's Mrs Hattle. My question is, now that the council have axed the subsidy for the 374, the 11 and 265 buses, where will that money be spent? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms Hattle, for your question. The money has been removed from the Council's budget and it won't therefore be spent anywhere else because it no longer exists.
Thank you. Ms Hattle, would you like to please be quiet so the question can be asked? Councillor Byrne, I would expect better of you. Can you be quiet, please, and allow the members of the public to ask their questions? Thank you.
Okay, in an email to me on the 31st of August, you informed me that there was £120,000 left of this year's budget that you received from central government. Now, you received £432,000 to protect and enhance bus services in Thurrock. As you have previously mentioned, the other bus services are commercially viable, and therefore with over 43,000 trips being made last year on just the 374, why can't the government funds of £432,000 be used for the service it's intended for, even if that means altering the route? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Councillor Maney, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms Hattle, for your question. As I explained in my answer to your email, there is a little over £100,000 of this year's allocation remaining, and I'm afraid that wouldn't even come close to supporting the free services in question. In terms of next year's allocation, as I've also made clear, we are looking at a number of options, and it may be that we make a decision to try and fund the service in the communities that have been affected, or we may not. There are a number of other services which are currently losing money. They have been commercially viable in the past, and with some support they may be again, but we have to look at all the services in Thurrock and see which ones are worth protecting. I think, in terms of these free services, they've never been commercially viable. So if we were to use the fund to which you're referring to prop them up for another year or a bit, we'll be back in the same situation when that money runs out, whereas there are other services which, as I say, have been commercially viable in the past. They're not at the moment, but with some support they may be again. So we have to look at everything in the round and make the best decision in the interest of the taxpayer.
Thank you. Thank you. We are now going on to item 7, and this is petitions from members of the public and councillors. Yeah? Oh, right. There was another question from Mr. Hattle, but unfortunately he couldn't attend this evening. So, okay. So, regarding his question, a written response will be provided. Petitions from members of the public and councillors. Please be advised that in accordance with the Council's petition scheme, 3 notices of the petition scheme, 3 notices of petition have been received. Can I ask Ms. Hattle to come forward to present her petition? You have 3 minutes to speak. I'm sorry to make you all come and down. You could have stayed there in the first place, couldn't you? Thank you.
Thank you. We, the taxpayers of East and West Tilbury, Linford and Horndon, request the bus services being reinstated in these areas. The removal of these socially necessary services, your wording in your bus service improvement plan of 2021, is having negative financial and emotional impact on the most vulnerable residents, with some becoming housebound unless they have the financial means to fund alternative transport to access medical services, local amenities, or even family members, hardly ideal during a cost of living crisis. The decision to cancel these services, according to Councillor Manny, in a recorded public meeting in July 2023, was based solely on budgetary concerns, yet he made no effort to seek alternatives. A letter from the Department for Transport confirms over £432,000 was given to Thurrock Council to protect and maintain bus services, and that the same amount is likely to be received next year. Yet Councillor Manny is withholding £120,000 of these funds rather than spending them on their intended purpose. Is Councillor Maney qualified to override the Department for Transport terms of a grant? He is also opposing the use of Section 106 funds for a transport project, even though £50,000 has already been used to install bus stops which now have no purpose. As this decision is based purely on budgetary concerns, why was a retender exercise not undertaken? Surely this would be a fairly basic first step in looking to reduce costs. This process could have been run in tandem with the Council's post-consultation process and would at least demonstrate that they were acting in the best interests of the taxpayers and not the committee. Certainly, it should at least have been considered before withdrawing 3 bus services, leaving several communities isolated. As a volunteer group, we have sourced 2 options that would come in below the existing budget quoted by Mr Manny, and that's before fair revenue and reimbursement for concessionary bus passes are considered. We can provide these details to the Cabinet members if necessary. We also obtained hundreds of petition letters and 75 impact statements from those most badly affected by this decision, another thing Councillor Manny's office has failed to do. This supports Councillor Watson's statement that the consultation was seriously flawed, either by design or poor management. The mismanagement of taxpayer funds by this council is well publicised, and Councillor Manny and the other Cabinet members have decided that the most vulnerable members of the community should be punished for this staggering negligence. This is neither fair nor is it appropriate, given that all Cabinet members who voted for this are elected to work for all of the people of Thurrock and not against them. It certainly feels as though the most isolated and deprived communities, as quoted again from the Bus Service Improvement Plan, are being punished for the financial mistakes made by this council when the central government funding is there to be used exactly for this purpose.
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I've addressed most of those points in my answers earlier, but just to repeat, I have to return to this issue of the fund that you're referring to from central government. You seem to be implying that it's for those free services. It's not. It's for the betterment and enhancement of public transport services generally. And as I said, there are a number of services that we have to look at. These free form of services are not the only bus routes in Thurrock. There are a considerable number, and they're equally relied upon, and we have to make a decision. And as I said, I'm not saying that some of this money can't be used to fund these services potentially, but we've received a number of requests for help from operators, and we have to consider all of those. And it may be that we use some of this allocation to re-provide a service, or we may not. But we're certainly not going to withhold it just for the fun of it. We intend to use it to get and try and get the most out of it to ensure that we have the best possible bus service in Thurrock. If I might, Madam Mayor, I think we do need to just remind ourselves of some facts. And you've quoted from some of the agendas that were presented before committee. Well,
Councillor Maney, would you wind up now?
In that case, I won't read what I was going to, Madam Mayor, but I can only repeat that. I think I've addressed most of your points. There was a very long consultation, and this information you wish to submit could have been submitted at that point. You're still free to submit it, and we'll consider it. But I think I've answered most of your points as best I can. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Ms Hattle, if you'd like to make your way back to the public gallery. Thank you. Can I now ask Councillor Byrne to present his petition? You have 3 minutes to speak, Councillor.
Well, it's not my petition, it's a resident's petition, but I'm presenting this petition on behalf of a resident named John Radford. John has asked me to say this petition is being sent to both MPs, Essex Commissioner Dr Smith and the Police Commissioner. All Conservative members are welcome to sign this petition and expect Leader Councillor Jeffries to fully support the residents. I have 250 pages of signatures with over 5,500 signatures. At last week's planning meeting, the Vice Chair voted to shut down the lungs of the Greenbelt, citing 4,000 people signed a petition. She said she had to listen to the will of the people. This petition has 1,500 more signatures than that. And by the way, there's another 3,000 coming next month. So 1,500 signatures more than that. Will you continue to listen to the will of people, or continue to cherry pick to suit your own political agendas? This petition demands an independent inquiry into the financial collapse of Thurrock Council with £1.5 billion debt.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Leader, you have 1 minute to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for your petition. Obviously, we will look at this. But what I would say on this is that a number of measures have been put in place to investigate, to look at what went wrong. We work every day to make sure it doesn't happen again. We work with commissioners, we work with officers. So all of these things are being done already at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now ask Councillor Collins to present his petition? Please, you have 3 minutes to speak regarding your petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shouldn't need 3 minutes. Balstonia Park used to be a well-maintained, well-used park with few problems associated with it. However, over the years it has become a magnet to those who want to ruin the area for local neighbours, the experience of legitimate users of the park, and add unnecessary costs to the taxpayers by damaging equipment and leaving litter. We, the undersigned, call on Thurrock Council to work with the Essex Police and other partners to make the park, especially at night, a no-go area for those intent on causing antisocial behaviour by any and all means possible, including looking at locking this and other parks, cemeteries and other enclosed spaces in the evening. This petition addresses not just antisocial behaviour in our parks and open spaces, but the protection of children's play equipment, adult exercise facilities and other items of open-air equipment or outdoor furniture which require the council to organise some sort of protection from vandalism or arson. I propose that we ask the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Scrutiny Committee to take on a cost-benefit review of paying someone to lock the park gates where such gates exist at the end of every day, say 5 p.m, and reopen them at 9 a.m. the following morning. Having someone do this need not be expensive. We could pay an extra allowance to our existing council wardens to take on these key holder duties instead of hiring new staff. I would also ask the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Scrutiny Committee to look at the cost-benefit ratio of enclosing our other open play areas with substantial fencing and lockable gates. I submit this petition, signed by the residents surrounding Balstonia Park, as well as a number of Conservative councillors, and ask you to expedite a cost-benefit review of the proposed items hereto submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Byrne. We're not into theatre. Stop clapping. Just be quiet. No,
Thank you very much,
okay.
anyway, Councillor Byrne.
God. Leader, you have a minute to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Collins, for your comments and petitions. Of course, we'll look at it actively. If I heard you right, you're suggesting that councillors take on the responsibility for locking park gates? Was that what you were suggesting? What part? Oh, I thought you said. But we will consider and look at your petition seriously and get back to you.
Thank you. Right, item 8, update report in respect of those petitions presented at the council and council officers. This report can be found on page 25 of the agenda and is information on the status of petitions handed in at the council meetings and the council officers. Item 9, appointments to committees and outside bodies, statutory and other panels. Leader, do you wish to make any changes to the appointments previously made? You do. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just one change, and that is on corporate ONS, and that's to remove Councillor Anderson and replace with Councillor Gledhill.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kent, would you like to make any alterations?
Madam Mayor, Councillor Lydiard leaves the Standards and Audit Committee to be replaced by Councillor Worrell. Myself and Councillor Worrell leave the Investment Advisory Panel to be replaced by Councillors Hooper and Lydiard. Myself and Councillor Worrell will be substitutes on that panel. Councillor Shinnock leaves the Health and Wellbeing Board and will be replaced by Councillor Morris Cook.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Does any independent members wish to speak or have any alterations? No. Thank you. Is any member in disagreement with the nominations that have been made this evening? No? Right, thank you. Item 10, revised annual pay policy statement 2023 to 2024. Councillor Snell, would you please introduce the report that can be found on pages 27 to 42? You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Localism Act 2011 requires the Council to publish an annual pay policy statement which must be approved by Council by the 31st of March each year. The pay policy statement for 2023-24 was approved by Council on the 1st of March this year, and it applied a 4% pay increase for grades A to I. Senior manager pay was not included in that award as it was waiting a further report to Council. Pay for senior managers is governed by the Pay Strategy and Pay Policy for Senior Managers, which was implemented in 2010. An annual independent review is conducted to determine pay awards. The independent assessment recommended a 4% increase in senior managers' pay for 23-24, and a report came to General Services Committee on the 27th of June this year. General Services Committee were presented with 4 options to consider. The options ranged from granting the full 4% pay rise down to a pay freeze. The decision of the committee on the 27th of June was to accept option D on the paper, which was to implement a pay freeze. At this point, I should point out that one of the caveats to option D was that it was the most open to legal challenge. Indeed, employment contracts were reviewed and legal advice taken, which revealed that the decision to present 4 pay options to councillors on the General Services Committee was unsound, as it went against what the council was contractually obligated to do. Therefore, a further report was presented to General Services Committee on the 24th of August, and it agreed to recommend the revised pay policy statement incorporating the 4% award for senior managers to council. This is the recommendation before you tonight, and I will be supporting that recommendation. In addition, though, and as part of a wider pay review agreed by Council, General Services Committee instructed the Chief Executive to bring back a review of pay and arrangements for determining ongoing pay awards for senior managers. I shall leave it there and open to questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak? You have 4 minutes if you do. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I won't take 4 minutes. I am disappointed that we've ended up in the position that we've ended up in this evening. The General Services Committee originally voted unanimously for a pay freeze. I have absolutely no pleasure and no enthusiasm in saying that I don't believe we have any alternative but to agree with the recommendation that we have this evening. So that is what the Labour Group will be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Snell, would you like to... Oh, hang on. I've got Councillor Howden wishing to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I confess this paper alarms me tremendously. I'm deeply disappointed to not be in a position where I can vote in favour of Councillor Snell's paper, despite the tremendous personal regard I have for him. We had, and it's not over the issue of pay itself, it is over what I consider to be a dubious process. We had an investigation into the council regarding a historic lack of challenge from members and poor and incorrect advice from certain officers from some quarters. Tonight, this paper, after that review, should be a constitutional red flag. Let us consider the committee process that this paper has been through. The General Services paper of June the 22nd outlined that a full analysis of risk had been taken on the proposal in section 3.3. The section merely states that the, and quote, the option carries the greatest risk of legal challenge. Greatest risk. It does not say that it is an unlawful decision. In fact, it is listed as a discretionary option that was considered. However, the meeting of the 24th of August took a paper to unwind a decision to institute a pay freeze on the basis that, quote, Council advice confirmed that Council has got a contractual commitment to pay any increase recommended by the independent review, i.e. there was no member choice, it wasn't merely a risk, it was out and out unlawful. Members had been given the incorrect advice. Again. Now, I would like to reference the legal counsel advice in full, but following an email of the 26th of September, it's been quite clear that on the basis of legal privilege, I am barred from referencing that advice in full, which I find very alarming. Furthermore, to gild that lily, I have consulted the minutes of the previous exceptional meeting of full council, and out of the 17 points that were minuted on the 14th of September, the concerns that I raised about this process were not minuted once. My call for an apology to all members for what occurred, an outline of how it had happened, and reassurance that it could not happen again did not take place. In my view, constitutionally, we have ended up in an utter horlicks. that it lacks democratic integrity where the advice is shifting so rapidly, and it lacks a humility in the fact that the advice that was presented to elected members was incorrect. I do not criticise the fact that sometimes advice is wrong, but when advice is wrong, it has to be addressed. In my mind, I cannot vote in favour of the paper because it would sanctify what I believe is an entirely incorrect process, a process that has been challenged in the past. In my view, would not be legally compliant to vote against, because as it is stated in the advice, it is a contractual obligation. Now, whether or not we believe that contractual obligation was a sound obligation to enter into in the annals of history, that's neither here nor there. However, I certainly cannot vote in favour of the recommendation because considering the myriad of errors that have accompanied it so far, I cannot be confident that further errors are not present. Therefore, I have no choice but to abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, James has said it all really, hasn't he? So all my spiel on here is gone. But tonight I was sent a breakdown of the extraordinary meeting we cost, where the leader said it cost £3,000. I've been told tonight that meeting, it was £50 for air conditioning, £50 for photocopying, and the rest of it was charged out to officers for that night's work. So, well, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Councillor Byrne, is this to do with what we're talking about?
No,
Councillor Byrne, it's not actually to do with what we're talking about at the moment.
That's what I want to say.
Can you just turn your mic off?
Can I say what I want to say? I didn't know there was rules or what you had to say. Sorry. I'll know
Well,
next
it's
time.
helpful if we stick to the subject. Right, Councillor Spate. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Spielman indicated to speak. If he would like to go in front of me, I have no problem with that. Thank you for giving way, Councillor Spielman. I was interested then, earlier on you just mentioned questions, and thanks to Councillor Jeffrey's speech, a question sprang to mind. I wonder how many challenges we've actually had from our officers. I think that's quite relevant. Anyway, this chamber faces a moral dilemma this evening. Does it show affinity with the people of the borough, stand shoulder to shoulder with them in expressing the condemnation of failure? Or does it roll over, as it has done so many times in recent years, and place possum to the platitudes of people who couldn't care less about doing the right thing? The officers whose appallingly misguided advice led to this conundrum. Does any councillor here this evening really believe that 27 senior officers of the council who take home salary packages in 6 figures deserve a backdated pay boost? Bear in mind among them are officers that have been dismissed. The words of Dr. Smith, not me, they were dismissed for playing part in the council's cataclysmic financial disaster, and they're going to get a bunch of back pay. Our council leader, Councillor Jeffreys, clearly doesn't agree with that. On the 27th of June this year, he was quite adamant. Any award could be seen as a reward for organisational failure. And the leader of the opposition, who just spoke, was just as forthright. Councillor Kent said, "I worry about the wider signal it sends. An increase for senior people is not the appropriate or responsible thing to do." So I'd like to think they would stand by their convictions and vote against this tonight, and that the councillors they lead will be inspired to do the same. And I welcome Councillor Holden. And I think we need to ask ourselves what the repercussions might well be. We're talking about less than 30 officers. We don't know whether any of them have yet objected. Some of whom have already acknowledged they fell below their expected standards. Others, as I said, have been dismissed, which may well change their contractual position with the council. We're talking about less than 30 officers, as I say. So let's go to the worst case scenario. If each one went to an employment tribunal and won, the council might face a substantial compensation bill of anything up to, it's a big figure, £800,000. But in grabbing hold of that filthy lucre, these officers' sins would be painted on the public canvas. And you can rest assured hard-nosed journalists, perhaps myself included, will be there to tell the world about them. So how many would actually go for it? It's a risk. And of course, one wonders that those have already gone back to their leafy suburbs with their 40 pieces of silver would also wish to stir it up again. The council might also have to cough up around 50,000 in legal fees, which I find quite surprising and interesting what Mr. Burns, Councillor Burns, just said. We've got plenty of very senior legal officers working for this council. Maybe they could sully their hands by doing some legal work. I ask myself what's more important. And the talk about the danger of not attracting the right people if we go down this course. Well, Dr. Smith, in his briefing to us earlier this week, or the end of last week, told us we've got an outstanding list of candidates for the positions that are on offer. So clearly that falls by the wayside. This council has cut vital services to rural residents, stripped travel passes out of the hands of children, and is diminishing the quality of life across the borough. Well, it appears those people can go to hell in a handcart, according to the council. Well, if that's the case, then so can the officer elite on 100 grand packages. I'll be voting against this recommendation.
Councillor Spillman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will also be voting against this recommendation. I regard this pay increase as an absolute disgrace. This chamber, together with the collective body of senior management, bankrupted this council. And the idea that that body can award itself or accept a 4% pay increase, I think is a shocking lack of awareness, a shocking inability to read the room.
Please, can you be quiet in the public gallery? Councillor, sit
Now,
down until it's quiet. Right. Continue.
Senior management had the chance to show some moral leadership on this, and you have failed. You have failed to show the moral leadership on this issue. Soon you're going to be coming to councillors, whether it be the Labour group or our group, talking about the need for us to make tough choices that are going to affect our residents, that are going to disadvantage our residents. Well, you had a tough choice to make as a body, and you weren't willing to take it. I think it's absolutely awful. Now, at some point also, you're going to have the unions asking for certain pay awards, and you're going to be telling them about the importance of pay restraint. Well, good luck with that argument, because on that occasion, I'll be backing the unions. Now, this is a moment that we should never have got to, and let's not forget that it was sheer incompetence which got us into this situation as well. I resigned from Cabinet because I no longer had faith in the advice that I was getting from officers. We were promised that that was going to improve. Again, another failure. It's about time we sorted it out once and for all.
Thank you, Councillor Spillman. Before I ask Councillor Snell to sum up, is there any other councillor wishing to speak? No. Councillor Snell, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can understand some of the anger that's going around. I know where it's coming from. But the problem we've got with that is that it's not every single officer that bankrupted this place. It's not everybody that works for this council that caused the problems that we've got. And do we want to be the council that every time something goes wrong, we decide that we're not going to follow the rule of law, we're going to do what the hell we want to do, irrespective of what the law says we have to do? I don't think we want to be that council. It's important that we are shown to be fair when it comes to these issues because, as Councillor Spate said, there are a lot of people queuing up, the excellent candidates that want to come and join this council. But what signal do we send out if we get the hump with something and we deny a fair and equitable pay rise that's been agreed and is in their contract? I'm quite sure everybody here, it's very easy when you're talking about somebody else's contract and somebody else's pay rise and saying they shouldn't get it. Imagine if it was you in your workplace and somebody saying, well, actually, we're not going to give you your pay increase because we don't like you've had too many days off, so we're not going to pay you. Does that work? I don't think it does. I think we need to stand by the rule of law. It's not something we're comfortable with. The advice we were given was wrong. And that's something we're trying to address. And in terms of the contracts, the comment I've heard about the contracts that we've got is that they're unusual. They're not common, not what people regularly expect to see. And as I said in my initial speech, is that we have asked the Chief Executive to go away and come back with a revised policy where we don't have those sort of contracts ever again. That issue is resolved from anybody coming in new to the authority. But as it stands right now, it's not right that we don't honour a contractually obligated pay increase. Councillor Spate says about, you know, it's a risk people might take us to court, they might not, but we can't take that risk. We don't want to spend thousands and thousands of pounds on what is probably going to be a fruitless defence of a policy we know we can't defend. Because ultimately, legal counsel has said that it's in an indefensible position for us. It's not worth the risk. So it's uncomfortable, I agree. The situation we're put in is uncomfortable, and I agree that too. It's not a position we should be put into again, and hopefully we're going to take steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. But for now, I will support this, but as I say, it's not comfortable, but I think it has to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snell. Councillor Byrne. I did read the clock and I saw the time, and it was obvious Councillor Snell was just coming to the end, so it was an important point to make. I will now proceed to the recommendation. The revised annual pay policy statement 2023 to 2024 is approved in line with the Council's obligations under the Localism Act of 2011. Do members note the requirement? So, do members note the recommendations? Right. Well, hang on a moment. If we're going to vote, are we voting on, are we noting it, or are we voting that we haven't noted it? Because it's a vote of either we've read it and seen what's, hang on, and seen what's said, or we've read it, or we haven't read it and we haven't understood it. So are we voting to note it, or are we voting? Can you hang on a moment, please? I'm speaking. Or not? Can you just put your hands down? Sorry. Put your hands down for a minute. I'm speaking. Right, so we're all going to use our digital voting system. If it works. No, it's going to work. Trust me. It's going to work. So those who are all in favour of the motion, of the recommendation, press 4. Those who are against, press no. So it's quite easy. It's either red, a green, or yellow if you abstain. Have you got it? Yeah. So can you all vote? No. Oh no, it's come back on again. I want to go for that one. Right, so the outcome of the motion actually, Theo, I'll let you announce the vote. I abstain. Councillor Macy's put his hand up. Councillor Massey, you had your hand up, and I apologise, I didn't notice it at the time. Can you tell me what you want to say? Is it because you don't know what bit to press?
Madam Mayor, it's not that so much technically, I can work these, but none of our screens are working. We can't see which way members have voted. And it's not displayed on that screen where members have voted. So is that, none of these are working at all? I'm going to, it's on the main screen. I should imagine at that end if you can turn your head. But what I will do is I'm going to tell you what the vote is. At the moment, it's finished now, and we've got 25 for the motion, 5 against the motion, and 6 abstentions. 10, 15, 16, there's 36 members here. So the vote is carried. Okay? Thank you.
What was the vote? Mayor, Madam Mayor, you said you'd tell us what the vote was.
Sorry, Councillor Byrne. Could you stand up, Councillor Byrne?
Absolute circus, and you're a ringleader. You're a ringleader. You cut a 90-year-old off because you went 1 second over, and you let them as long as they want. No, she didn't. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. We all sat here and watched it. She's all one-sided. You're vile. You're absolutely vile.
Right. Councillor Byrne.
Madam Mayor, you said you'd tell us the results, and you haven't. So
I did. It was 25 for, 5 against, 6 abstaining, and that came to 36. Some people may have not wanted to vote. Or couldn't, that's true. Shut up. Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did wait patiently, like a good boy. And may I say that I disagree fundamentally with many, many things that are said in this chamber. But I could not in any way, shape or form want to be associated in those remarks that were just made from the gallery. They were totally out of order.
Thank you, Councillor Spate.
What I would say is, regarding the technology aspect, I mean, we're in another situation. We're back to square one. You just said we just don't know. We've got 25, we've got 5, we've got 6. We don't know whether some people chose not to vote or whether they pressed the button and it didn't work. At the full meeting in October last month, we had 44 councillors in the meeting and we recorded a 39-0 vote. We don't know what happened. I'm getting sick to the back teeth of the technology in this chamber that we spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds on, not working. The screens don't work. The hearing is appalling. The air conditioning doesn't work. We have senior officers getting themselves a fan. What about the members of the public? What about the councillors? It's just disgraceful. You said that you would get, this will work. You just said that, Madam Mayor, and it didn't. I don't believe it's worked. I'm very lucky. Come October's meeting, I'll be on a cruise. You'll be absolutely delighted I'm not here. No, I'm going to speak. I'm fed up with it. You need to instruct your chief executive to get this technology sorted out.
Councillor Spate, firstly, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, and I actually spoke to the Chief Exec, the leader, and Democratic Services before tonight to actually ask if all the services would be working and the voting system working. I was assured it was, and all the microphones. I totally agree with you. And I can assure you, if I'm going to take another vote in this chamber tonight, I'm going to go back to the old-fashioned way of putting your hands up, as long as they're up high enough so we can see what the vote is, because I think that is the fair way. I totally agree with you about the heat in the chamber. The fans weren't for the officers. I just said I got fed up with the heat, and could they get me a fan? And I'm ever so sorry, that's my age, because I obviously look near 90 rather than 70. So I apologise for that. Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, it's the same issue. The vote we've just taken was a clear majority. We will have votes coming up in the not too distant future where the outcome will not be clear. We have to get this sorted out. There's also the matter of transparency. It isn't clear who has voted for this, or who has voted against this, or who has abstained, or who hasn't taken part at all. We need to get this sorted before we get to those critical votes, those votes that are going to be tight, those votes that are going to be controversial.
Well, I have little faith in the system. This is my third council meeting, and it makes me look an idiot, and I will go back to having hands up. So that's the way I've decided to do it, because this technology is useless. Thank you. No, I've spoken. Put your hand down. Right. We're now on item 11. Progress of the Thurrock Council's improvement and recovery. Leader, would you please introduce the report that can be found on pages 43 to 56, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome this report and its contents, and it shows that we are making movement in the right direction. And with the Council's permission, we will continue to provide these updates on a quarterly basis. We have now passed a year in intervention, and we are working with the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities and the Commissioners to improve and recover the Council's finances. And this report indicates that we are on the road to recovery. There were areas in the past when the Council did not provide the services that residents expect. However, with a new leadership team and officers in place, we are committed to a more open and transparent approach, and these regular updates provide all members with the insight that they need to our improvement and recovery. We are on track to meet our target savings, and we are on the path to recovery. I welcome this report and that it shows things are improving, that there is a lot more work to be done until we fully recover, but that there is an improvement plan that is taking place. I'm happy to take any questions from members, along with Commissioner Gavin Jones.
Right, I'm now going to Gavin Jones, and I'd like you to speak. Now, this is not speaking to us as an officer, but as a commissioner. And I think it would be wise, and I do know Councillor Howden wishes to speak, and I don't know what other hands went up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members.
Thank you. Could you stand up, Councillor Spate?
Madam Mayor, I do apologise, Mr Green. I'm sorry. It's not down to you. I was told categorically by the legal and monitoring officer at the last, when I asked for a senior officer of this council to address this chamber, I was told, and I have it in writing, that is not what the full council chamber is for. We do not do it, we do not allow it. How the hell can it now be allowed when it suits somebody's viewpoint?
No, Councillor Spate.
No, it's not a now.
No, please, Councillor Spate, and I'm going to explain. I too asked exactly that question, and as we know, officers do not speak at council meetings. But Mr Jones is not an officer or a councillor, he is a commissioner, which is totally different. And that is why he can speak. Sorry, Mr Jones, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I say good evening again, and good evening to members. And as you rightly say, I'm not an officer of this council. For the benefit of the public who don't know who I am, Essex County Council is the appointed commissioner by the Secretary of State to support and help Thurrock recover. And as their Chief Executive of the County Council, I am acting as lead commissioner for this intervention as well. And Mayor, I'll be brief if I may, but I'm very happy to take questions, Madam Mayor, if you deem so appropriate. First of all, as commissioners, we strongly thank you and applaud the fact that you are actually reporting your improvement recovery plan to Council. We think that is very good practice because fundamentally, of course, if you've read the best value inspection, which I'm sure you all have, the recovery of the Council needs to be a full council recovery, which means every member and every officer really needs to understand what the actions are that the council is taking to address this issue, and also have the opportunity to shape and constructively challenge both with ideas and challenges to that as well. So that's a good sign. We've always said, since we've been commissioners here, actually, that Thurrock have welcomed us here, and we have found the relationship to be very positive and constructive across the political divide, and we, as commissioners, have tried to work in a very collaborative and supportive way to Thurrock Council as well. As the leader sets out, though, your challenge is very deep and very long. There is not going to be a swift resolution to the issues that Thurrock Council face. Broadly speaking, in our last letter that we wrote to the Secretary of State back in July, we were pleased with progress and engagement of the Council to the recovery plan as well. Just to remind you that our last report was ahead of the best value inspection, and therefore the response from the Minister was that your improvement recovery plan should reflect the findings of the best value inspection. And that's why you now we have an additional direction in terms of producing an enhanced improvement and recovery plan, of which you are well underway and making progress towards. But of course, we're going to want to see that actually the impact of your work and the pace at which you're operating to address the issues that have been identified. We've been very pleased, I think, by your approach to your restructure, which is a critical part as a part of your recovery, and that has gone well and has involved members from across the different parties in supporting that as well, and we look forward to seeing the results of that. And of course, it would be remiss of me to say that whilst we are encouraged by the engagement and the commitment that is being shown by the Council, the real challenges for you come up, particularly when it comes to setting your budget for next year, both the size of that budget and the shape of that budget, which, as we've heard tonight, will involve some difficult decisions. As commissioners, what we'll be looking for is that you're making those decisions within a best value framework, and particularly when you make those decisions, that your engagement with the members of the public is strong, so that you can explain why you're making the decisions that you'll make, because that indeed was one of the findings of the best value inspection as well. With your permission, Madam Mayor, I'll leave it there for now and happy to take questions as you see fit.
Is there any member that would like to? Firstly, we have Councillor Kent, who's going to speak, and you have 4 minutes to speak. And then if any member would like to ask Mr Jones any questions, we can go from there.
Madam Mayor, I too welcome this report, and I support the intention to bring back reports on a regular.
You need sacking. You're disgusting.
So I do welcome the report. I welcome the fact that it will come back regularly. I hope that future reports have a little more substance than this report and show more of the improvement journey that we're on. I want to start with the positives, and I think the overwhelming positive is the speed at which the Managing Director Commissioner has set in progress the new senior leadership team. I think that's been handled exceptionally well. Some difficult decisions have been made. People have been moved on from the authority, and that's been done with a kind of deftness of touch which has minimised disruption. We should have people appointed in the next couple of months. I welcome that, and I welcome the speed that it's been done at. Mr Jones touched on finance. Finance is one of, but not in my view, the biggest challenge that we face. At the moment, we are spending 40% of our revenue budget on servicing our debt. You know, to put that in context, we had a lot of people in the gallery earlier exercise quite rightly about losing bus services. The whole of that bus subsidy would be paid in less than 3 weeks' debt repayments from this authority. If we just think about that, we know that that is not a sustainable way for this authority to continue. We have to do something about it. We're looking at £75 million worth of revenue savings over the next 5 years. Again, that's on a revenue budget of around £150 million. That is a huge, huge task. I don't believe that that can be done with the authority continuing to exist and to function in the way that it does now. I think it needs radical, if not revolutionary, change. The last that I want to touch on is about governance and scrutiny and culture. So the best value inspection report spoke of a lack of openness and transparency, a culture of insularity and complacency, a state of unconscious incompetence. Unfortunately, we've already had a debate tonight which seems to confirm that that state of unconscious incompetence still exists, at least in parts of this authority, and that concerns me greatly. When it comes to openness and transparency, just 2 weeks ago, Cabinet decided in secret on the future of 9 parcels of land in the ownership of this authority, pink papers in private session, with members not knowing what those 9 parcels of land are. Madam Mayor, that is simply not right. That isn't showing that we're moving on from a culture of secrecy and insularity. We talk about member-officer relations, which I think are still patchy, but in places are getting better, but you still have member-member relationships, which just aren't good enough. That culture of insularity, the administration voting against supporting an inquiry into just what went wrong here, an independent inquiry. The council actually writing to the Secretary of State suggesting that next year's elections might be cancelled. Madam Mayor, that isn't showing that we're learning. That is still being insular, that's still being secretive. So when the leader says that we are on the road to recovery, on the path to recovery, I prefer Mr Jones' version, which is that we are in the foothills of recovery. I think that is exactly where we are. We're in the foothills. We're not on the path yet.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Before I go to the councillors who wanted to speak on the subject, presumably these are going to be questions, are they? No, they're just... Is it okay, Mr Jones, if you stay there while they do their speech, and then if there's any questions? Thank you. Councillor Howden, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jeffries, for your report. I think when we consider recovery, we need to be clear what recovery actually means. It is dubious whether or not Thurrock should have actually been granted unitary status in the 90s. Our size and our demography makes it exceptionally difficult to run a healthcare economy. So whether or not we should have taken on unitary status is dubious. It is one of the reasons that an investment strategy was embarked upon in the first place. So if we are looking to recover to a position of 2, 5, 10 or 20 years ago, that is simply not a viable strategy. Recovery needs to be something more profound. We need to reinvent the council. We need to reimagine what the borough means. That means you need a very specific plan for growth. A growth in businesses coming here spending money, a growth of developers building houses for the future, a growth of people who want to come here, develop skills, train people, everything from welders to doctors. The thing that inhibits growth is confidence in the local authority, confidence that that council can actually be trusted to deliver what it intends to do. We are not going to encourage confidence to engender growth while we continue to have, for example, a chamber where a public gallery has got poor speakers, a chamber where air conditioning doesn't work, where we have frequently got a front door to the building that is locked, possibly putting us in breach of our obligation towards homelessness regulations, and when we continue to be in a position where we have to doubt the security in this building, especially towards members following controversial meetings such as planning. These are issues that have been very well rehearsed. If we can't get the small things right, no one will ever believe we will get the big things right. One of the things that I'm sure Mr Jones is very proud of is the recent inspection Essex County Council has had into children's services, and it is rightly a very laudable achievement. It is what I would call a big achievement. One of the things that I would call a small achievement of Essex County Council is how well the members were always prepared. During the period in which I was Cabinet Member for Health, I was not always on perhaps the same page as my counterparts from Essex or Southend, but I always admired how well they were supported by their officers. Now, I was terrifically supported by my directors during my time as a Cabinet Member, but the wider suite of facilities that members have is limited. There were times where my directors in children's services and adult services, they were trying to run a massive department, they were trying to brief me, they were trying to get me ready for question time, all at the same time when they were trying to do their full-time jobs. I would say that one of the reasons Essex gets the big things like children's services right is because it gets the lower tier issues right. It gets things like member services right, democratic engagement right. And I think that is one of the things that has made the difference between Essex and Thurrock over the last 20 or so years. And to be fair, I think Dr. Smith understands that, and in my experiences with the new Chief Executive, he generally invites democratic challenge. One of the things that I would suggest is quite simply how the House of Commons manages these issues. They have an administration committee, a cross-party committee, that could involve the Chief Executive that is empowered to deal with the low-level issues that we all face. Security for members after meetings, the quality of resources that we are getting, the functionality of this building. If we settle on the small issues, fix them like the broken window principle, deal with the low-level background noise, we can move ourselves from constantly focus on urgent decisions and moving us to focusing on important decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Val Morris-Cook. Thank you. Councillor Redsill, was it a question or a statement you were going to make?
Both, I think, Madam Mayor.
The questions, if it's to Gavin, we'll leave till afterwards.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think most of us sitting in this chamber at the moment, and the people sitting in the gallery, probably not many left now, but most of us want to see a recovery, and most of us need that. And we need to get, I don't perhaps slightly agree with James, but we can't keep going back. We have to look forward. If we don't look forward, we're going to fall into another trap of keep going back. I think most of us want to see somebody brought to account for all this. We've gone a whole year now and nothing's happened in that way. And I think general public are seeing that nothing's really done yet. I know there are things that we can't talk about and that's by the board, but I think most of us, a lot of councillors in this chamber have taken a lot of flack over the last year. You know, some of them have had death threats and God knows what. It isn't everybody's fault. It is stuff that we are being given that isn't in the right context sometimes. And I think most of us, we do want that recovery really badly. We need to look up, but if we, as James is right, if we can't get the small things right, we're not going to get the big things right. So I just really want to know who, if we're going to see somebody brought to account at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Most of what is in the initial report tonight is already in the public domain and has been cut and pasted from previous reports. A majority of this has been debated on social media platforms, and I am sure many ward councillors have had most of this raised on the doorsteps and at their own ward surgeries. But having said that, we need to start somewhere. I welcome that we finally have a report, and there is a commitment led by the Chief Executive Commissioner and Commissioners to ensure that update reports are brought forwards here quarterly up until the end of intervention, whenever that may be. There are some very sound warnings in the Commissioner's report, and hopefully we will see improvements over the next quarter and then tracked through this quarterly report. Maybe we need a traffic light system so that we and residents can see if we are actually making progress or not. We must have these reports and debates in the chamber if we are ever to regain the trust of the residents of Thurrock. No more secret decisions, no more selling assets without informing the ward councillors, and no more cutting services for us only to find out when we try to access them. No, our council will never ever be what it was before. And for those directly involved, I hope you continue to be held accountable at the ballot box. But for now, we must all play our part in reshaping our council so that one day in the future, we become financially stable again. And keeping on the theme of finance, the executive summary of this report covers setting a balanced budget for 24-25. I welcome that we are finally seeing a positive step forwards and that the Cabinet are planning to be open with all elected members about their initial thoughts on what cuts and reshaping of services need to take place for this council to set a balanced budget ahead of the actual meeting. I understand from my conversation with the Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Snell, that these initial conversations have started with his backbenchers of his group this week. This gives me some hope and feels like there has been some change. I look forward to those same proposals being given to the Labour group in the very near future and in good time so that we too can play an active role in agreeing what will be a very difficult budget setting process in February. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Councillor Kieran, is it a question or a statement you're going to do? Well, the questions, if you could leave the questions till the end, that would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. That's better, isn't it? So, I welcome this report and the quarterly reports and the commitment to this happening until that day when intervention ends. Having a look at the executive summary, it mentions the difficult decisions that will come with agreeing a new vision for how services are delivered. My two concerns with that is how will the most vulnerable be protected, and how can we ensure that local residents are involved in these decisions and that they are taken at the lowest possible level. Because with savings of 18 million needed this year, it is imperative that we keep our most vulnerable and our local communities at the forefront of our decision making. Indeed, Thurrock Labour Group is committed that should we take the council in the near future, we will be ensuring that decisions are taken at the lowest possible level for our communities. If our local communities are empowered, then they will be empowered to look out for our most vulnerable too. With £4 in every 10 being spent on servicing debt, It is concerning that the Commissioners are disappointed that some timelines have slipped, impacting the programme to reduce borrowing commitments. It is a timely reminder, I think, that despite the changes underway in this organisation, the same executive politicians who presided over the financial collapse remain in post in their executive positions. It is positive to see Commissioners have excellent engagement from members of this Council, and I hope to see this grow and flourish and develop for every single quarterly report that we receive. We have to get this right. The people of Thurrock have been let down for too long and deserve better.
Thank you, Councillor Kieran. Councillor Allen, is it a question or a statement?
Thank you. No, it's, I've got a couple of questions, in fact.
Well, the questions
Okay.
can we have at the end?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I refer to Councillor Kint stating secrecy without elected councillors knowing about parcels of land, assets being sold, our assets. Can you confirm that these assets, parcels of land, will be sold on the open market? And can you also confirm that a special team has been brought in solely to sell off these assets?
Councillor Allen, these are questions and
yeah.
they're going to come at the
But
end, aren't they?
My concern, Lady Mayor, is these parcels of land could be identified as substantial plots for social housing, reducing Thurrock's current housing waiting lists. Along with the Commissioner and this administration, do they actually plan to tackle social housing needs for Thurrock people and substantially reduce the waiting lists?
Councillor Allen, that's questions. Questions. So we'll do the questions at the end.
Right.
Okay.
Well, they're all questions, yeah.
All right. So
Right.
I'll come back to you at the end, and you can do your questions then. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Muldowney, is it a question or a statement? Thank you.
It's a statement.
Thank
Madam
you,
Mayor.
Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also welcome the first substantive report on the improvement and recovery plan since intervention began over a year ago, and also for the promise to bring back quarterly reports to the Council moving forwards. This marks a cultural shift from one of secrecy and lack of transparency under the Conservative administration who led the Council to its present woeful financial state. It's a pity that it took a government intervention and an enhancement of Commissioners' powers to achieve this shift. I think that Councillor Jeffreys, the leader of the Council, is being rather optimistic that we're on the road to recovery. I agree with the Commissioners who note in their comments that we're still in the foothills. There are lots of challenges going ahead. The bottom line is that the Council needs to reduce its budget by half over the next 5 years. Such is the disaster inflicted upon the people of Thurrock by this Conservative administration. Councillor Kent has reflected on the fact that the Council is still spending £4 in every £10 on servicing the massive debt incurred by Conservative mismanagement of Thurrock finances. And I'm also aware that concerns have been raised by Labour's shadow portfolio holder about the failure of the Strategic Investment Advisory Panel to meet as promised. These are worrying signs and show that recovery and improvement is patchy. Sorry, some things that I'm going to miss out because it will be repeating what other councillors say, so I don't want to take up that time. I am very concerned about the slippage of work on the budget this year. We were promised that the budget work would be completed over the summer to enable meaningful engagement from all 49 councillors in the autumn period. We understand that, you know, there are massive savings, 18 million of savings needing to be made. For all of us to meaningfully engage in that and to produce cost savings that really are going to protect the vulnerable, the most vulnerable in the borough, we really need for that pace to be quickened and for there to be an action plan for how that's going to be rolled out. We must avoid the travesty a repeat of last year's travesty, where only half the budget savings needed were presented, and only in the form of one-line descriptions, meaning that we were forced to vote against the cuts, as we had no idea what specifically they related to, nor how they would impact vulnerable residents. There are many other areas where the commissioners have pointed out that there's a lack of progress, risk management and internal audit, which the commissioners also do not consider adequate. Under the Conservatives, Thurrock Council borrowed billions to invest in very high-risk, unrated companies, whilst opposition councillors were repeatedly reassured that the investments were very safe, that we were ridiculous to be raising concerns about them. Without effective work on risk management and internal audit, and with the failure of the Investment Advisory Panel to meet as promised, concerns remain very high in these areas. We're still in need of a corporate plan which sets the strategic direction of travel for the council. Questions like how will the council continue to deliver for residents within a radically reduced budget are still to be answered. And the current administration does not seem to have any answers, and often seems to be divided amongst themselves, as we have seen tonight, with factions openly fighting in council meetings. How can a divided administration deliver in the face of the extreme challenges we face?
Excuse me,
a
Councillor.
problem cannot be solved at the same level of thinking as that which produced it. Although I would agree that with the leader that some improvements have occurred, is patchy. And when I look at the current political leadership, who was severely criticised in the BVI report for sleepwalking the council into disaster, I wonder, where is the new thinking? Where is the strategic leadership?
Are out of
Where
time.
is the vision? To sum up, although I welcome this report and the new spirit of openness it represents, and I'm happy to support the recommendations to note, I am still unsure of the council's ability to deliver.
Thank you,
under the
Councillor.
old stale thinking of the
Councillor,
administration
thank you.
opposite.
One thing I'm going to say, right at the start of this meeting, I did say, do not all shout across the state. You know, we're not at school. This is a serious meeting. Councillor, I was referring to Councillor Spillman. And hang on, Councillor Shinnock, please. It's not like you to be like that. Right, Councillor, I'm not going to argue. We'll be here all night. I'm now going to go to the questions, and then I'm going to do a comfort break. Okay? Thank you. Councillor Val Morris Cook. I'll come to you in a minute. Councillor Spake.
Oh, it's now. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question really to the Leader of the Council rather than to the Commissioner, because I think the Leader of the Council is probably more in a position to answer. As been stated, I think the residents of Thurrock, whilst they will appreciate that we're getting an update, what the residents want to hear is really what are the consequences and what action is currently being taken, if any, against the companies or against people specifically. Whilst I appreciate he won't be able to go into detail, I think it would be very helpful for the residents of Thurrock to know that actually, whilst they voted against a full public inquiry, this council is actually doing something to recover some of the monies that has been taken illegally, in effect, from the council.
Thank you, Councillor. Leader, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Morris Cook, for your question. You're right, I can't go into detail for obvious reasons, but be assured we are doing everything possible. These things do take a long time. It's frustrating. You know, when you speak to those and they tell you how long it's going to take, or you know why you can't do something, it's incredibly frustrating. But we are, you know, not me, but you know, officers and commissioners are working to try and recover as much money as possible. And I'm sorry, there was another point to your question. There was another question.
It was really to understand, as well as the consequences of people that have been involved, what is any other way that we are trying to recover some of the monies that has gone, like part of the 1.5 billion. Are we able, because as they're saying, every £4 out of every 10 is paid for the debt. Surely if we are able to recover some of those monies from companies, that will reduce that, will enable us to be able to deliver some services to our communities and to our residents.
Yes,
Thank
Leader.
you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we're divesting from the investment, so there will be money coming from some of the investments that we made, and hopefully I'll be able to bring news to full council fairly shortly.
Councillor Allen, I'll have your questions now, please, to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. Firstly, I've got to say, Harry Potter comes to mind because this certainly seems to be the Chamber of Secrets. I understand that Thurrock Council has received a request from government as a part of the government bailout to employ a small team of specialists to sell off on the open market with no prior planning permission all assets, for example, parcels of land owned by Thurrock Borough Council. Is this true, firstly? That's the first question.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
That's the first question, yeah.
So, Madam Mayor, I can't answer that question directly. I think that's one for the council leader to answer. What I will say, though, is as commissioners, we're interested in any decision the council makes, and it does it within a best value framework.
So, Leader, can you answer the question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen, for your question. The officer team do from time to time employ people that are able to give us advice, professional advice, to make sure that we make the right decisions. And when it comes to asset disposal, yes, we are taking advice from professionals to make sure that we get best value for Thurrock taxpayers.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, I did stop you and you had another question, you said.
Yeah, thank you, Lady Mayor. Yeah, these parcels of land that are in question could be identified as substantial plots for social housing and actually reducing Thurrock's current housing waiting lists. What does the Commissioner, along with this administration, plan to do to tackle social housing needs of Thurrock people that are on the waiting lists?
Thank you, Councillor Allen. I'm not sure if that is something the Commissioner can answer, because that's not really a Commission.
Correct, Madam Mayor. It isn't directly. So just to be clear, the Commissioners are not determining your priorities for you as a council. That is for you to determine what those priorities are. As I said previously before, once you determine those priorities, we'll be interested to see how you fulfil against them.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran, you had a question.
The question was at the start of my statement, which is about how decisions are going to be pushed down to more of a local level when we're trying to find, when we're presenting budgets and trying to empower sort of local communities and looking after the vulnerable. So within the strategy, how is that going to be made apparent that the vulnerable are being protected and local communities are making decisions?
Thank you. Again, that's the leader rather than the Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kerrin. Yeah, I'm very keen as leader that we start to, bring down to as low as possible, and I don't mean that derogatory, but as low as possible so that the man and the woman in the street get to make decisions about the kind of council they want. And I think moving forward, as we start to look at how Thurrock Council should operate and work, I think that the model we should take is that we go out to the communities, we ask them what do they want, what kind of services they want, what kind of council do they want. We listen to what they say, we bring that back, and then we formulate ideas and policies to make sure that we deliver for the people of Thurrock.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Allen, next question.
Was I limited to 2 questions? Can I ask another one, yeah?
Go on then.
Okay. Again, following on from these parcels of land, can you please, in all openness and transparency, because that's used quite a bit in this chamber now, here tonight, reveal what parcels of land that Councillor Kemp was referring to? I think it was 9 parcels of land. Can the secrecy, you know, the curtain be dropped tonight and revealed to all councillors present what pieces of land Councillor Kemp was referring to, please?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Kent's right. He did raise that in the Governance Recovery Board, and he was given assurance that we would look into it and make sure that in future, any assets that are coming forward for sale, they're not on pink paper, if that's possible, and that all ward members will, in fact, be notified before they go up for sale.
Councillor Spate, you have a question for the...
I did have a statement, but
Inspector.
I've danced quickly and made it into a question. I heartily endorse everything that Councillor Holden said earlier about the day-to-day issues that are causing problems for this council. In my view, we are trying simply to change Thurrock from the top down, not from the bottom upwards. Communication with councillors about the big issues is very poor. I accept that as an independent, I'm outside the inner circle, but time after time, leaders and deputy leaders of both groups are briefed, which they can dissipate through their internal systems. Similarly, time after time, myself and my 4 independent colleagues are not told. We're almost an afterthought. I'm pleased to say, though, that there are many positives. I've taken part in some excellent briefing meetings. Yesterday, for example, I enjoyed a great hour-and-a-half discussion and briefing with colleagues interested in housing maintenance. We learned a great deal from Basildon Council, for example. It was a good example of working together, of asking for views and listening to questions.
Could it be a question, Councillor?
I'm going to get there.
Please.
I've had a bit of statement, now you've asked me to add a question on the end.
It was a question.
Yeah, I'll get there, don't worry. It will, I'm sure, build a really effective housing maintenance procurement process in the end. Again, we started from the bottom where information was shared, where people felt engaged. I have the same experience. There you go, now you see, because technology doesn't always work. I have the same experience in adult social services, where Thurrock is leading with some innovative, fantastic work, and I hope Councillor Coxall will be sharing it with members later. But please, let's get it right at the top and at the bottom. Take senior councillors and senior officers out of their bunkers. I feel that councillors from all corners of the political spectrum are having to fight battles to make a lot of their points. That is not the way forward. Some of our directors are exceptional. However, I look and hope for better leadership from this administration. We are not the enemy. We are just different divisions fighting the same war. And can I ask, this is my question, that we see more engagement from the commissioners? And could we see some of them attend briefings and discussion groups where I'm sure they will get a really positive feel about the way this borough is moving, and they will also see some of the negatives, but it can only be constructive. Please come and engage with us down at the bottom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. A lot of what you said is an example of really good practice in that organisations that find themselves in trouble tend to be very inward thinking and not connected to a wider world out there. So what you described about making connections, whether it be with other authorities, learning from different authorities, learning from each other, is absolutely one of the paths to recovery. So I applaud that thinking and more of it for members and for officers as well. Thank you for the invitation for us. We'll be delighted to try to attend more. You appreciate that we have other responsibilities, but it is important, you're quite right, that commissioners don't just gloss the surface, that actually they do go down a bit lower and get a better understanding. And as you rightly say, stuff that is working well, but equally stuff that it isn't, because part of the commissioner role is not just to wag our finger at you and tell you to get better. We have experience and knowledge that we would want to bring to the table to help you think through that as well. So thank you for the invitation. Let's have a look to see which ones we can attend.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne. A question to the Commissioner?
Oh, leader, guess.
Oh, the leader, okay.
Yeah, the leader stated earlier we're on the road to recovery, which we all welcome, I welcome it, but is there any measurable evidence of that?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Yes, I think there is. You know, we're working towards a budget. We're working towards divesting the investments that we had, paying down the debt. Chief Executive, as Councillor Kent mentioned, has restructured the senior officers. Members' briefings are coming forward. I appreciate everything that everyone said in the chamber tonight that says sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But I think sometimes what we have to remember, this is a huge ship we're trying to turn. It's not going to be done overnight. But I do genuinely believe there have been some real positive changes. And speaking to a lot of the people that we employ, so coming back to a point that Councillor Spate has just made, you know, the Chief Executive and I are out every week talking to people, also talking to staff here, and I think they are starting to see a physical change in the way the council is being run.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to leave.
Excuse me, can you please be quiet? No, you cannot speak from the public gallery. Please do not speak. I'm sorry. No, please, can you go?
Madam Mayor, can I just ask a quick
Can
one
you
to the
just
leader?
wait a minute, Councillor Allen? I have seen you. Councillor Redsill, you have a question for the Commissioner. No, you haven't. Right. Councillor Allen, I'm going to take your question, then I'm going to go to a comfort break.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do appreciate it. The question I've got is to the Leader of Council. Leader, do you have any real concerns that these parcels of land are going to be lost to London boroughs?
Leader.
Thank you,
And
Madam Mayor.
also, Leader, while you're up, you can just sum up as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Allen. I don't know. I'm not sure how these parcels of land that you refer to would be lost to London boroughs. It'd only be lost to them if they actually purchased them from us. And I genuinely can't see that actually happening. That London boroughs will be interested in buying bits of land in Thurrock. Unless, of course, Sadiq Khan's got plans of, you know, bringing the ULEZ charge into the rest of Thurrock.
Leader, we've currently got Newham occupying Tilbury.
Madam Mayor, so just a couple of points that I'd like to make in summing up. Councillor Worrell, yes, I can assure you there will be opportunity for members to contribute to the budget debate. It is only just the start of autumn, so Councillor Muldooney's concerns that she's not seen anything yet. You know, we are getting there, and it will actually happen. I think I've already mentioned the pink papers that both Councillor Kent and Councillor Worrell mentioned, and we are looking at doing that to making sure we're more open and transparent. Councillor Spate, be assured both the Chief Executive and I are out and about in the community every week listening to what people say, plus listening to members of staff that work here in the building. Councillor Allen, social housing. We're going to be bringing forward the local plan, and I look forward to you supporting that local plan, because that will eventually free up land for developers to build houses, and some of those will be social housing. So I look forward to seeing your vote along with your independent colleagues when we bring that local plan to full council.
Right.
Lady
No,
Mayor, can I come back?
Councillor Byrne. No, Councillor Byrne.
He mentioned
Councillor
my name.
Byrne, you've had 5 times to speak. And also, Councillor Allen, sorry. Councillor Byrne's done a runner. Right. I will now proceed to the recommendations of the full council. Note the progress made on the council's improvement and recovery. 1 to 2, agree to receive quarterly reports of the progress. 1 to 3, note the work. Councillor Byrne, will you be quiet, please? Councillor Allen, sorry. Oh, Allen. Right. Note the work to develop and enhance improvement and recovery plan. 1 to 4, note the comments from commissioners found at Appendix A. Do members note the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. I'm now going to call a 10-minute comfort break. So we'll convene again at, hang on, God, you're quicker than the hair at Hackney. 25 minutes. I'll call you at 25 past. Thank you. Councillors, you can be seated. And I think that was probably the right call because I even had to queue to go to ladies. So obviously it was a good call. I've just spoken to the leader of the council and he has said that he has asked officers regarding Councillor Allen's point. I've got Byrne on the... Councillor Allen's point of view about naming the pieces of land. So he's going to give you an update. So, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say, I've spoken to officers and tomorrow morning there'll be an email going out to all 49 members with a list of those sites, and the consultation period has been extended by a further 5 days, giving all members an opportunity to send back their comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Okay, is that all right?
I'd still like to know whether the leader's got any concern who the assets are going to be sold
Allen,
to.
I've got you your name site, so can we leave it there for a minute and then we'll go again? Thank you. Right, so now where am I? I forgot. Right. Item 12. Update of... No, we've done that. Yes, the best value commissioners on the appointment of Section 151 officer. Leader, would you please introduce the report? The report can be found on pages 57 to 62. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report gives members the background to the decision to appoint a Section 151 officer. Mr Mayor had previously worked at Slough Council during the time that that council was also in intervention. Members will find on the tables in front of them Mr Mayor's CV. As the report sets out, this matter was considered by the General Services Committee on August the 24th, where it was decided to recommend to commissioners the appointment of Mr Mayor as the Section 151 officer. A decision that was then endorsed by the commissioners when they exercised their powers in appointing Mr Mayor as our Section 151 officer. I'm happy to recommend this report and also happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak? You have 4 minutes.
Madam Mayor, we're asked to note the report. We're happy to so do.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would any other member like to speak on the report? Thank you. Leader, do you wish to sum up? We will take that as read. I will now proceed to the recommendation that full council note the decision of the Best Value Commission to appoint Stephen Marr as Section 1501 officer. Thank you. Questions from members? Members, you have to note that. Noted. Right. Sorry about that. I have already suspended the time for this item, and there are 8 questions to the leaders and 10 questions to cabinet members and committee chairs. These can be found on the agenda 63 to 66. But I would ask councillors if you could keep it short, to the point, and ask your questions and also the answers to be short. Question 1 from Councillor Gledhill to the Lancel Redsill to the leader. Thank you, Councillor Redsill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Don't look nothing like him. As sport is in your portfolio, could I ask that you get together with your officers and find out what has happened to the sports strategy? Seems to have gone missing.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Redsill, for your question. The Active Place Strategy, APS, was approved by the Cabinet in January 2021. The Active Place Strategy is comprised of 4 documents, including the playing pitches strategy, indoor built facility strategy, open spaces need assessment and active travel. The delivery of sports and improvements to facilities is contained as within the APS. The APS is linked to the local plan and will be reviewed within the next 12 months as is a technical document that supports the local plan. We have to date delivered Active Thurrock Network. This is a group that meets 4 to 6 times per year and supports sports and community groups, share information, allocate funding for delivery of sports and physical activities, and organising network events. The Active Thurrock Network is the main group that monitors and discusses the needs and issues for sports and physical activity across Thurrock. This network is represented by cross-council departments, Thurrock Sports Council representatives, Impulse Leisure, Active Essex, Thurrock Mind, and other guests involved with sports. Capital investment in sports pavilions and buildings over the past 2 years, the Council has invested in sports buildings improvements that were identified via the APS, and some of these significant investments include the roof of Orsett Recreation Pavilion, Orsett Bowls Club windows and doors, Mardyke Pavilion repairs and new fencing, Bellas Park outdoor changing room boiler replacement, and a boiler replacement at the billet changing rooms. Investment in parkour sites at Grays Beach Park and Daisyfield as part of the Towns Funds Accelerator programme, and community and sports groups supported with funding applications to external bodies such as Sports England. Both Grays and Tilbury Town Funds, as part of the nationwide Levelling Up agenda, have funded to improve sports facilities in these towns.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Redsill, do you want to say anything else?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that, Leader. I just hope that can you keep us informed, and especially the Sports Council, which used to get sort of 20,000 up, have now got 5,000, and we've done a great deal, and Councillor Maney and I in our area, we've funded for all the stuff that's on Blackshots Field. That's what we do as Friends of Blackshots. But I think the Sports Council tries to do an awful lot of work, but it doesn't give us much scope with the small amount that we get. I mean, we've not got anything left now. We try to help all the coaches that give their time freely, you know, and there's a lot of coaching out there from people with football, and I know most of us in this chamber would like to see a little bit more done with sports. So we keep kids off the streets, that's much better. I just feel that Active Essex is fine, but it doesn't actually give anything. It tells you what you can do.
Councillor Redsill, can I actually have a question?
Yeah. I just wanted to hope that the leader will actually sort of give the Sports Council just a little bit more so we can do a lot more. I know it in the frame of things it's a bit hard, but I think if you can just keep us informed and so that we know what work is going on in the Sports Council.
Thank you, Councillor Redsill.
Yeah, it seems to have gone a bit awry at the moment. Thank you, Leader.
Leader, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Yes, of course, I promise to keep you informed. And like with all budgets, they're all being looked at the moment.
Thank you. Question 2 is from Councillor Panjali to the Leader. Councillor, please read out your question as set out on page 63 of our agendas.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity. So, I would like to ask people from Avali and Upland want to know when our council will restore basic services without interruption in terms of timely bin collection, and clean and green maintenance.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Panjala, for your question. The bin service has greatly improved across the borough recently, and the Clean and Green team have put extra resources into the area to address the issues that have been raised. A deep cleanse on the Kennington estate took place on the 12th of July by both ground maintenance and street cleaning staff. The weeds were sprayed and removed and the channels mechanically swept. Upon inspection of the area on the 7th of September, there had been a visible improvement to the street scene. The team have also brought back some of the staff that were lost earlier in the year. This will provide them with the resilience when there is a need for holiday or sickness cover. Apart from normal day-to-day operational issues, the collection service is now making collections on scheduled days. Further improvements such as the collection of recycling side waste have been introduced, and other improvements to how we manage assisted collections and repeat misbin collections using the Bartek system. Enhanced reporting of blocked rows using the Bartek system to take photos of obstructing, preventing collections are being looked at.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Panjal, would you like to propose another question? Or
I would like to know what action plan do you have in place to protect our green belt area across Thurrock as well as Avaland Upland Ward?
I think that is what the leader answered before, was it not? No. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Panjala, for your second question. As Councillor Panjala will know, the law provides greenbelt protection and we must always comply with our legal duties in this regard. That said, we know that we cannot provide homes, jobs and infrastructure that our borough will need in future needs without such greenbelt release. To deny this is to deny younger families the opportunity to own a home of their own, consigning many to a life of eye-wateringly high private rents. It will also hold back our local economy and frustrate the opportunities that could come our way. The best way to ensure controlled greenbelt release while protecting those areas that are special is to support the emerging local plan. With a local plan, we were best placed to decide where much needed homes and employment sites should be built and what supporting infrastructure should be delivered. As Councillor Panjana knows, his own home was of course built on greenbelt just a few years ago, and that application enabled it, although it was hotly contested by many in the Averley community, however, you had no compunction in owning a home on previously opened greenbelt, and as an owner of a new energy efficient property in which to raise your family, I know you would not seek to deny others the same opportunity. That same application also provides an example of how communities can benefit from new development, even if we are not comfortable. As you know, the construction of the estate on which you live, previously Greenbelt, helped enable the construction of Averley Community Hub, where you now hold your local surgeries, I understand. And of course, Councillor Panjana is an active supporter of Averley Football Club, whose new state-of-the-art stadium was also built on Greenbelt. I look forward to your support for the local plan so that together we can ensure the continued protection of our most precious greenbelt in Thurrock.
Councillor Pajal, do you want to pose a supplementary question?
Yes, ma'am. People of Avaland Upland Ward, so they don't want to developments where the green belt going to be loose. So far, whatever 3 projects recently has been started, taken initiative, but all of them are local people, they don't want. So still the leader of the council would support those projects. Just I want to know where we're going to lose the green belt.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Panjana, for your second question. I'm not sure which developments he's actually referring to, but I just referred to what I just said. You actually live in a house that was built on Greenbelt. You wouldn't be living there if the planning committee hadn't taken that decision to build on Greenbelt. So you appear to be wanting to deny other people, Averley residents, residents of Thurrock, their opportunity to own their own home. So I would hope if you really want to protect the Greenbelt in Averley and in other parts of Thurrock, you'll vote in favour of the local plan. That's the way to protect the Greenbelt in Thurrock.
Councillor Pajali, do you want to suppose another question, part of the question? State supplementary, sorry.
Yeah, I would like to bring the notice about the ship lane development, so that's one.
Is that actually to do with the original question? It is. Okay, Leader.
So I'm still not sure which developments that he's talking about, but well, yeah, Ship Lane, but there's, you know, there's lots of developments. So the PDI centre that he's referring to, that's been passed, that's gone through. Planning Committee has made its decision. And then there's another application out that, you know, it has not been brought forward to the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Leader. Question 4 from Councillor Jackie Maney to the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the Leader advise how many fines or prosecutions the Council has ensured in respect of environmental offences, including littering and fly tipping?
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Maney, for your question. The following fines have been issued by the Environmental Enforcement Officers. 5,166 fixed penalty notices issued in the financial year of 2022-23, with 255 prosecutions. 2,795 fixed penalty notices were issued in the financial year of 2023 to date, and with a further 63 prosecutions.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Maney, do you want to ask a supplementary, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Leader, for that answer. I understand the Conservative government has increased the level of fines that councils can now issue for environmental offences. The maximum amount of those caught fly tipping can be fined has increased from £400 to £1,000. Those who litter or graffiti can now be fined £500 instead of £150. And the maximum that those who breach their household waste duty can be fined up to £600 from £400. So that we can send the strongest possible message, will you agree to review the level of fines currently issued by Thurrock Council so that they can become much tougher?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney, for your supplementary question. Most definitely. When we introduced tough fines, we certainly saw a drop in littering. People realised that they couldn't just drop litter in Thurrock, they would be fined. So I welcomed what the measures that the government have put in. We are reviewing all charges, and I can almost definitely say there will be an increase in the fines that we issue to people, definitely for fly tipping. It's a scourge, we need to get rid of it. Fly tipping and littering, and any other fines that we're able to do to stop this antisocial behaviour.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Do you wish to propose a second supplementary question? Thank you. Question 5, Councillor Jackie Maney to... Yeah, one question. Yeah. Councillor Jackie Maney to the Leader. Councillor, can you read out your question as written in the agenda on page 63?
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Would the Leader advise when the findings of the waste review are to be known?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney, for your question. The service is currently collating service options to be considered as part of the 2024-25 savings proposals. Once these have been presented and agreed by members, the waste review will be completed.
Councillor Maney, do you want to propose a supplementary question?
Please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for that answer. While we await the outcome of the review, will the Leader join me in expressing genuine gratitude to our refuse collectors for the role they have played in getting the service back to some form of normality?
When the council resumed brown bin collections, I saw how hard our refuse collectors worked in order to clear the vast numbers of overloaded brown bins in what was a period of high temperature. I hope I can speak for you and all the members in placing on record our thanks for the role that these frontline workers undertake.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Maney. 100%. Our bin crews work extremely hard in cold, wet, miserable weather, hot weather, you know, you name it. They're out there on the streets collecting our rubbish. The service has improved, and sometimes they are having to collect incredibly heavy bins, which I certainly found out recently when I went out and did a day's work with them. Yeah, 100%. In fact, I went out with other councillors here as well. And I would, at this particular moment, urge any councillor here to arrange to go out with our bin crews and see how tough the job really is.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Maney, yes. Do you want to go out with a bin crew? Yes. Thank you. Question 6, Councillor Muldowney to the Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Following the recent accident involving nuisance motorbikes, which resulted in a young child suffering life-changing injuries, can the portfolio holder reassure the residents of Chadwell St Mary what steps they and their police partners are taking to ensure that such a tragedy will not be repeated?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Muldowney, for your question. Can I take this opportunity to express my deep sadness at this incident? I have met personally with the family, and at that meeting I did ensure that there were council officers and the borough commander from Essex Police in attendance. I can confirm that council officers and Essex Police are already working together to assess the area of this incident and establish if there are any steps that can be taken to ensure the safety of residents. Operation Caesar continues to take place on Alsett Heath in Chadwell, targeting the use of off-road motorbikes, and Essex Police work alongside the council ensuring ASB of this type is enforced. I would reiterate the words of Essex Police and encourage any resident from anywhere in the borough to report these types of incidents so Essex Police can build up a record of where it's happening and take appropriate action.
Thank you, Councillor Muldowney. Do you want to propose a supplementary? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries, and thank you, Madam Mayor. I've spoken at length with the mother of the child who was the victim of this, this terrible incident, and she did speak at length about the meeting that she had, but she actually came away quite distressed and feeling that her concerns hadn't been taken on board. And as yet, I mean, this is a lady who actually went out with her family and reviewed the area, even though it's not actually her local area where her child was injured. Took photos and made suggestions about how the area could be made more safe. But as yet, she's not received a response to that from the council. Can I ask that you, in all urgency, communicate with the mother and the family about what steps are being taken? Because at the moment, certainly the impression that I was given after several hours of conversation is that she feels that her concerns haven't been taken on board and that the council isn't doing anything to improve target hardening or other measures in the area. Thank you.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Muldowney, for your supplementary question. I'm really sad and sorry that the family went away feeling that their concerns won't be heard. It was a long meeting. It did go on for several hours, and I believe we listened to every concern that was raised. When the accident was first happened, there was an initial review by officers who went out to see if there was something they could do quickly. There wasn't something that they were able to do straight away. We did commit to a further review of the area to see if there were other things that we could do. And, officers, as far as I'm aware, are working on this. But, of course, first thing tomorrow morning, I will chase and ask them if they've come to any conclusions and to contact the family again.
Okay. You've got another supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that assurance to you know, come back and complete that communication loop and give some comfort to the family. You did mention the off-road, the quad bikes and Operation Caesar. I know from my discussions with our police partners that they can't be deployed in the area where the accident happened, which makes it much more important that the council looks at any possible target hardening that they can make in the area. Subsequent to my discussions with the mother, I've also had residents come to my surgery who live in the area where the incident took place, and they are also very concerned about renewed activity in the area. Councillors and residents, as local councillors and residents, we do feel that an increased police presence, increased police patrols are one way that would be effective as a deterrent. Also, any target hardening measures from the council would be appreciated. Can I have your assurance that you'll progress this request for additional patrols in your meetings and discussions with our police partners?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Muldowney, for your supplementary. I mean, I refer you back to part of the answer that I gave to your original question. And part of the problem is if the police aren't aware that these activities are happening, it's very difficult for them to actually do anything. It's true the quad bikes aren't appropriate for that area, but they are being used on Orsett Heath to great effect and in other parts of the borough as well. So, you know, I hope during her surgeries and during her walkabouts and her talking to her residents, she really does encourage them, like my colleague Councillor Carter did around Orsett Heath, for residents to actually report. As a result of his actions, residents started to report and the police were able to act within that area to ensure that the bike problem was tackled. So please, ask residents to report. More residents report, the more likelihood that the police are going to be out. I know that she met with the police this evening after we'd arranged for the chief, for the borough commander to be here. I'm sure she raised these concerns and he heard them, and I'm sure he'll act upon her concerns.
Thank you. Excuse me, before I ask Councillor Kent to pose his question, as you know, I extended the meeting so we'd go through all the questions, but I now have to ask for you to vote on whether we'll extend the meeting by 30 minutes to get the motions in as well. But I need someone to second that. Thank you, Leader. Is that okay with everyone? Thank you. Agreed. Thank you. Question 7 from Councillor Kent.
Cabinet has agreed to find savings of £18.2 million from the revenue budget for the next 2 years to 24-25 and a further £13.65 million for the following 3 financial years. Does the Leader of the Council believe that savings of this magnitude are achievable?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. The Council is very confident that it can achieve this level of savings and is well known it is essential that it does so to seek the secure future financial stability of the Council. We are working very hard on this and we will bring forward to scrutiny in the near future proposals for 2024-25, which will also start to identify proposals for 25-26. Looking beyond that, as the Council accelerates its savings programme, in the value and pace, we will also be creating time and space to take a full strategic approach underpinning the new ways of working and the future operating model of the Council. It should be noted that it is also a level of savings that can and has been achieved in other councils elsewhere in the country. Nonetheless, the Council will keep these targets under continuous review and will flex them in the future if necessary, taking into account of the other work that the Council is also undertaking, such as divesting from its previous investments, sale of capital assets and reducing its capital programme, all of which ultimately impacts on the Council's revenue budget.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, I agree that we have no option but to make significant savings. The Leader of the Council was talking about new ways of working and a new operating model. Can you tell us what he means by that?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you're referring to an answer I gave earlier to a question, and that is it's about the council listening more to residents, finding out what they actually want and engaging with them and working with them differently so that they decide what kind of services, what kind of things that they think we should be doing. And they might be different in one area to another area, but we should listen to those, take that on board, bring it back here, and then devise policies and ways of achieving the results for them.
Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, I kind of agree with that outlook. My view is that we should be working with the community for the community to directly deliver as many council services as possible. Does the Leader of the Council agree with that? And does the Leader of the Council agree that the Council should become a provider of last resort?
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent. I certainly think the Council should be a provider of signposting to people where they're able to get the services and helping them achieve that. And the only way it can do that is if it actually listens to what people want and then either provides the service themselves or signposts where people can actually get those services. As a council, we're not going to be able to do everything that people want. We have to be realistic and we have to use everything that's at our disposal to be able to provide the services that people want.
Thank you. Question 8 from Councillor Kent to the Leader.
Will the Leader of the Council give an update on the presence of RAC within the wider council buildings estate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent. A desktop assessment of the Council's estate has been undertaken and buildings identified and prioritised for inspection. Specialist surveyors are being procured to carry out site inspections with these expected to commence next week.
Councillor Kent, do you want to propose a supplementary?
Madam, in view of the time, I'll be very brief. I welcome the fact that there's work underway. Can I just ask that we get the accelerators behind that work so that we know if there's a problem or where those problems are as soon as possible so that we can start to get a plan in place to put them right? And can we have a report on that that's public as soon as possible?
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent. Most certainly, the experts are looking. Once we've got a clear picture, we will share that with all members if we're able to. What I would say is, like every council across the country, they're trying to procure the services of inspectors. So, you know, we are, with everyone else, we're trying to procure them as quickly as possible. As soon as we've got something to report, of course, I'll come back to full council or ONS.
Thank you. No more questions. Thank you. Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is the Cabinet Member for Housing confident that our hostel services are the best they could be?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Howden, for your question. I have to begin by admitting that I have not as yet managed to visit any of these services, which I believe you have managed to do recently with some of your scrutiny members. The two sites where services are provided by our partners at Sanctuary Housing are visited regularly by officers and management from Housing Solutions, with monthly meetings held to discuss residents' concerns and any issues around repairs and other provisions. In fact, complaints regarding provisions and staff are very rare. In fact, the last complaint of this nature was some 4 months ago and was immediately addressed. However, should you have a specific reason to question the provision of the council-managed site, please let me know what that is.
Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Scrutiny Committee recently visited a number of sites and many of the visits were positive. I was deeply alarmed when we visited the site designated for the housing of women fleeing abuse. It was uninviting, cold. You walk down an empty corridor into a room where the walls were stained and chipped with no more than a bed, a sink and a rickety wardrobe. It was, frankly, like a prison cell. I've tried to avoid bringing this issue up in public, not to wish to undermine the service, but it's been 55 days now since I raised my concerns, and neither myself nor my committee have had answers to those concerns. May I ask why?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. That's not right. I am informed that following your committee's visit, the head of Housing Solutions, plus a manager from Mears and our own repairs and planned maintenance manager, visited the site on the 12th of September 2023 to see what could be done to brighten up the place to make it more comfortable for residents. I'm grateful to you and your committee for making this visit, and I will be doing the same myself very soon to see how the brightening up process has fared, as I'm informed that there is a plan of action to make the communal areas and the private rooms more homely for residents, which I believe will involve the resolving of any minor repairs and looking to refresh or replace furnishings, and also the refreshing of the paintwork. Please accept my apologies that you or your committee were not informed of this intervention. Once again, I thank you for making the time to the visit and for your comments. So in answer to your question, I am confident that our hostel services are of a good fashion, and I will endeavour to ensure this is maintained.
Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'm gratified to hear that something is taking place to improve the comfort of the provision. This question could have perhaps been avoided if committee had actually been informed of that. One issue I do wish to raise was that when I questioned why it was so unwelcoming, I was told verbatim that it was temporary accommodation and people were not meant to be comfortable there. That is frankly a disgusting thing to be informed. Temporary accommodation, yes. To be told it is designed uncomfortable, whilst that was perhaps not the intent of what was said, that is an entirely inappropriate thing to say. Would Councillor Johnson agree with me that perhaps appropriate training needs to be put in place to ensure that not just the provision is improved, but the mentality behind the provision for vulnerable women fleeing abuse is also improved?
Sorry,
Councillor Johnson.
I can only answer most definitely, Councillor. That's a very inappropriate thing to say. As you said, maybe the context wasn't meant to come across as bad as it did, but that doesn't matter. It was said. Yes, I agree with your comments. We should put some kind of training in place to stop that happening.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Question 2 from Councillor Pearce to Councillor Ben Maney. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Councillor Maney, why has the planning application 23/4/00033/0/FUL Lakeside Logistics Hub taken so long to come before the Planning Committee or otherwise be determined? Thank you.
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your question. You refer to a complex application for a two-storey logistics facility on a site that is currently identified as part of the Lakeside primary retail area. Officers have been working closely with the applicant, and revised proposals were submitted by the applicant in July. Further consultation with statutory consultees, including National Highways, has followed, and their comments are now being addressed. If the outstanding issues could be resolved, it is intended that the application will come before the Planning Committee shortly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does the portfolio holder agree that where residential or commercial developers wish to develop area on Greenbelt, they should work alongside the local plan and not try to avoid the process? And do you further agree that the Planning Committee should reinforce this principle on its decisions? Thank you.
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your supplemental question. I think whilst we await the local plan or the emergence of the local plan, it doesn't mean that building has to cease. In fact, we need to build, and the Planning Committee should confine its decisions to planning policy. I do, however, think that the local plan is a relevant consideration. It's known already, some of the sites that will be promoted are already known, particularly in relation to commercial sites. And certainly, as the leader said, and I think as I've said previously, we will be publishing the local plan this autumn, and we'll be asking for members' support because, as we've heard, that is the surest way to protect the Greenbelt and control development in the way that we want it to be controlled. I certainly think at that point, the Planning Committee should have due regard for that. And I can also say that since over recent months, I have met with many developers, residential and commercial, and, you know, it does send a message, I think, when they're working with the council, they're engaging in the local plan process, they spend a lot of money already doing that. And I think when a developer comes along and basically shirks that process and decides that they're not going to engage, they're just going to go for broke and put in a planning application, I do think it sends a message to those developers who are working with us. What's the point? So I think you raise a valid point. I would encourage any developer, commercial or residential, that's looking to promote a sizable application to work with us via the local plan rather than just put in a planning application. I don't think I can say much more than that. I mean, the committee, as I say, must make their decision based on planning policy. I've seen no evidence to suggest that they haven't to date, but I do think some synergy between the decision-making of the committee and the emerging local plan would be in good order.
Councillor Pearce, do you want to propose your last supplementary?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Question 3 from Councillor Raper to Councillor Deborah Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As more and more council services are moving on to online, could the portfolio holder explain what meaningful support is being put in place for residents who are unable to use the internet?
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your question. I, like many in this chamber, are an age whereby we can cope with some activities being digital, but not necessarily all, and are easily shown up by our grandchildren. But some of our parents and friends and relatives simply can't cope with digital technology for a variety of differing reasons. And let's face it, sometime or another, we've all been frustrated by robotic questions that demand a definitive answer that you just can't give. And so we simply need to have a proper conversation with a real person, and that's unlikely to change. So it's imperative there is a support mechanism in place to ensure access to information for all and that no one's excluded. If someone telephones the council, they can access the centre advisors who will talk through processes and often complete them online for residents as required if they ask for help. And for example, the team often support residents completing full benefit and housing applications. There are free public access to computers and telephones in libraries and hubs that route directly to the call centre. There is face-to-face service in the civic office, and assistance is given to access online services or signposting for appropriate support. For example, the DEP team offer face-to-face support. If residents feel improving their digital skills would help, there is also a referral system to free skill training at the Adult Education College. And there's a digital inclusion group that's been established to ensure that there is focus and consideration given to that specific topic throughout any changes to management and processes and access to the council as services as we go forward. And there's also corporate customer training. Will also reinforce the importance of recognising digital inclusion. I hope that helps to reassure you.
Councillor Raper, do you want to propose the secondary?
Yes, please. Thank you for that answer. One of the issues most frequently raised by residents is that of parking permits. If, as instructed, residents contact the civic offices for help, they are given an email address to ask for a call back. If the issue was the use of the internet, this is unhelpful. How will this be rectified?
Councillor Arnold.
So if I understand you correctly, they're phoning the call centre and they'll be given an email address, or they're trying to do it online and can't?
I called on behalf of a resident because I'd been told that that was what they should do. And when I said, I've got the resident here, could you put us through? The answer was, oh no, we don't put you through. It's an email address and they request a call back, which of course was nonsense.
No, that's crazy, and that for me is an internal training issue for that particular member of staff, because if you can't access, then you can't email. I mean, I fully appreciate the problem that you've got there. So I will personally take that up and I'll go and speak with the customer services, and if you wouldn't mind emailing me with the date and a rough time of the call, I'll be able to find out who answered the call so that we can ensure that that person is trained better.
I'm not sure I'll be able to do that, but thank you. I've got a third supplementary.
Okay.
Or second supplementary. Can the portfolio holder confirm that at least one officer from each main team will be available to answer the telephone inquiries every day? Residents have raised issues of difficulties linked to the use of IT and telephone contact for numerous council services, including housing, council tax and residents' parking permits, among others.
Councillor Arnold.
I can't say that there will be a person from every specific service when there's over 700 services that the council supplies will be sitting in the call centre, but what we are doing and what we have always done is, and should be happening, to be quite frank, is that officers that are within the call centre are trained to handle multiple service inquiries and can often answer them themselves, and if they can't, then they can find the person that can answer it. And yes, wherever necessary, face-to-face contact will be given. So I'm not sure why you would expect over 700 people to be sitting in a call centre. That's not going to be physically possible.
Can I
Thank you, Councillor Arnold.
Just to say,
Well,
what I actually said was one from each main team. And it's only based on the fact that residents have come to me with an experience of not being able to talk
Councillor
to someone.
Aper.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Byrne, please, to Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I asked this question 2 months ago and didn't get an answer, so let's hope you answer it. Can you tell us how and why the £7.5 million CELIT fund was plundered and used to demolish our fully functional Stamford station and not for its intended use?
Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Byrne, for your question. Funding has been deployed on the project with the intention of delivering the project outcomes as part of the wider scheme. If this is not deemed to be the case by CELIP, then the money will be returned.
Councillor Byrne.
Brilliant. Thank you. Proving we have yet to grasp the concepts of being open and transparent, Henderson and Taylor have been on very secret, behind closed doors talks with the Stamford station. This happens to coincide with they gave the Conservatives a donation at the end of March this year. What message does that send out to Thurrock people? What message does that send out to competing builders? Is there a conflict of interest between you and Henderson and Taylor as they give you money?
Councillor Snell.
I wish I could answer your question, but I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know those people. Did they really? That's news to me, and I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. All I can say is that you seem to think there's some sort of... Would you like me to answer the question? Not that I can answer the question, but you asked me a question about the funding from CELIP. That's what you asked me. And I answered that question. So the money is to develop a scheme on that site to provide a station. That scheme is still ongoing. So we have, I think it's till November to provide the business case to CELIP to make sure that we're still using it for the intended purpose. And I'm sure we'll be able to do that. And we are progressing phase 2 of the site, and we're starting some work on phase 1 also. So, aside from your vague conspiracy theories, It's been delayed, but the project is ongoing and the money is being put to the purpose it was intended for.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you're being open, transparent and honest, thank you. You're trying to push through a speedy business case to CLEP so you don't have to return the $7.5 million. Is it a bottom-covering exercise to avoid embarrassment of another black hole, even if it means corner cutting station in cahoots with a builder? This is before we even touch on the £4 million you wasted on buying a brewery site across the road. Why this speedy behind closed doors activity? Is it not a hit the panic button to hide another multi-million pound blunder under the XX leader's watch? Why the sudden rush?
Councillor Snell.
Councillor Byrne does love a conspiracy theory, doesn't he? It's a conspiracy
Byrne,
theory.
let Councillor Snell answer.
You seem to be implying that there's some sort of conspiracy for us to retain the sum of money and not use it for the purpose to which it is intended. Well, that is never the case. This money is controlled by CELEP. We have to justify to CELEP what this is being used for. Now, if you're saying to me that you do not want us to progress a new train station and the phase 2 interchange at Stamford, then say so. But the project is progressing. Now, I understand the problems we had getting to this stage, but you know, the money is being put to the purpose for which it was intended. Now, there's no conspiracy there. It's just an ongoing project.
Councillor Byrne.
On the one hand, you're moaning that nothing's getting done, and when things do start to progress, you're moaning that we're doing it too quickly. Can you make up your mind what it is you want? It's no good sort of being...
Councillor Byrne, can you be quiet when someone's... Councillor Byrne.
Unfortunately, Councillor Byrne, I have to justify things to council and also to CELEP eventually, not just to your many followers on Facebook who somehow believe all your wild conspiracy theories.
Question 5
you,
from Councillor Byrne to Councillor Cockshaw. I presume... Yeah, I presume that Councillor Byrne... Right, thank you. Councillor... hang on a minute, because I'm going to come to Councillor Fish in a minute, but where's Councillor Byrne? I couldn't see him. I thought he was laying down, and I was wondering. Okay, Councillor Fish.
I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest in the question because I'm director of Thurrock CBS.
Thank you, Councillor Fish. That will be noted by the monitoring officer. Councillor Byrne won't be speaking because he's having a rest. So Councillor 6... Oh, sorry, no. Councillor Spate to Councillor Maney, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would, you probably won't let me abbreviate this question, so I'll read it as quick as I can. At the last full council meeting in July, I gave way on my motion regarding a relief road from the Stanhope Industrial Estate to a similar motion proposed by Councillor Piccolo, who candidly told the meeting he had an election to fight in May. I have no interest in kudos for getting the job done and will strongly and vociferously support Councillor Piccolo going forward. In his motion, Councillor Piccolo said, Council has already put views to Ruth Kelly and DP World representatives and others. So the good news was work had already started on pursuing this much-needed benefit for the residents of Wharf Road in particular and Stamford Hope in general. It has been somewhat disappointing there has been no update or briefing for ward councillors since the motion was unanimously passed. Can the portfolio holder update the chamber on what action has taken place since July?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Spate, for your question. Madam Mayor, as made clear at the July full council meeting, the option of a relief road from the Stanhope Industrial Estate is under active consideration as part of the local plan process, and this remains the case. As it has been just 9 weeks since the July meeting, it might be a bit premature to expect that much progress has been made in terms of progressing the relief road, but discussions have been ongoing, including between myself, the leader and officers. Last week, Cabinet was also briefed on the local plan site proposals, and this included options for a relief road. Last week, I took the opportunity to visit Wolf Road and the Stanhope Industrial Estate to refresh my memory of the situation following further representations from Councillor Piccolo. This has reinforced my personal view that a relief road is much needed. Madam Mayor, in terms of ward members being briefed, you will be aware that all councillors have been invited to a series of area-by-area briefings scheduled for October, where details of the local plan will be shared. This will be the opportunity for Stanford-le-Hope West councillors to see the plans for the relief road and discuss the matter further. It remains the case that we aim to bring the local plan before a meeting of full council this autumn, and I look forward to all members supporting this. Following this, there will be a further consultation and conversations between the council, Freeport partners and the relevant landowner can begin in respect of the relief road. Thank you.
Councillor Spate, would you like a supplementary?
I surely would. Thank you for that information. Was really useful. It would have been really good to see it in updates to motions further down the agenda, in which case I wouldn't have needed to ask this question, which takes us back to where we were before. I also wrote to the new senior officer dealing with this matter and asked for a briefing, because on the night in question, when that briefing for Stamford and the area, I will be on a HOSC or at a HOSC meeting. No response. So I go back to my earlier statement to this council about councillors basically being treated like mushrooms. Do you think we are getting the right information on these important schemes and motions that we are bringing to you as senior members of this council?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I would certainly hope so. I mean, obviously, I can't account for the individual dialogue that councillors have with officers outside of public meetings, but I do think every effort is being made to keep councillors informed. As I said, the briefings will be an opportunity for members to be briefed on the local plan generally and in respect of their own wards. I understand that where members can't, you're not the only member who has said they can't make a particular briefing, and I think there are plans to provide some mop-up sessions so that people who can't attend the original ones will get the opportunity to be briefed. But even if they can't make those, I would expect officers to make themselves available to fully brief members of what is in the local plan. I can only suggest if people have asked for information from officers under my remit and they haven't got that information, then please let me know and I'll happily take that up, because as I said to a member of the public earlier, even if I don't agree with a point that's being made, I do wholeheartedly expect people to get answers to reasonable questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Spate, you have one more supplementary.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. Would the portfolio holder please accept my thanks for the statement that he made about having recognised the significant need for this road. I'm sure that will be welcome news to the residents in Wharf Road and Stanford-le-Hope in general. So please accept my thanks for doing that, and I look forward to this project developing.
Thank you. Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and yeah, I'm grateful for Councillor Spate's kind remarks. I couldn't not say, however, that like many of these infrastructure projects, as the point has been made, they are conditional on support of the local plan. So I look forward to your support for the local plan when we bring it forward this autumn. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 7 is from to Councillor George Cockshall. Thank you.
It's me again, sorry. I would cut it down, but there we go. I recently attended a briefing for members of the Health and Wellbeing, ONS and HWB board, where members of our own team and partners outlined their work. It was a detailed presentation and contained a host of information which is far too long to go through in detail at this meeting, but it contained much to be proud of, and many examples of success were presented. This council has had little to shout about of late, but there is much that is of merit in the work of our adult social services. They would be the first to downplay that and would acknowledge that there is still much more to be done. But I think they deserve recognition for their efforts, and this chamber is a good place to express it. Would the portfolio holder give a brief summary of the work of the team, particularly in terms of the preventative work that has been done, which puts Thurrock in the top quartile of councils across the country in terms of spending resource to tackle problems before they're exacerbated, thereby not only helping the wealth and well-being of residents, but saving the authority and the health service money by not dumping problems on the door of the local A&E department as a last resort.
Councillor Cockshall.
Thank you, Councillor Spate, for your question. Actually, I do apologise, Madam Mayor, in advance. This is such a broad remit about the preventative work that my team do, really across adults, housing and health, but also across children's services and much wider. If we actually look at preventing ill health and how that actually impacts on our health and care services, if you sometimes the ironic thing is to go direct provision and clinical routes, when instead actually the greatest benefit comes from social economic changes and how we can actually improve that. In Thurrock, we've got 3 strategies. We've got the health and wellbeing strategy, which runs across the board, all ages, very high level and aspirational. Beside that, we've got our Better Care Together strategy, looking at how we transform our adult services and actually look at integrating with our partners. And on our children's side, we have our Better Future strategy, looking at improving health and wellbeing for our young people. I really just want to draw members' attention to the health and wellbeing strategy, in particular 2 domains in which we're looking at tackling health inequalities and actually looking at how do we prevent ill health across the borough, not only in, as I say, in one particular service, but this is a cross-service remit and actually a goal for all of us to aspire to. Particularly being healthier for longer in domain 1. We're actually looking at, though it's some of the unhealthy behaviours in terms of, it could be weight management services, smoking cessation, but also looking at some of the things that we've actually done with the NHS so far, with smoking rates below in Thurrock than the national average across in England. I also want to talk about person-led care and health and care, when we're actually using human learning systems to actually deliver bespoke solutions to people who do present with complex and multiple needs often enough. At the moment, we're using our integrated locality networks, and actually Stamford and Corringham is the test bed for where our new ideas are being tested. That's all running out of the integrated medical health and wellbeing centre there. Before I do, we are talking about adults quickly. I do members have probably had enough of hearing this, but actually some of the things we are doing. We have integrated teams built into our new primary care networks and how we're developing a system around there. We actually have addiction, mental health and housing teams working together. This is a really, really important thing of actually making sure we create these bespoke solutions for our community. And actually, when we look at how we're going to empower our community further, I think it's really important to say how, I know the leaders touched on it, I know the leader of the opposition has touched on it, about how we want to use the community to empower them. And actually, it's really important that as we go forward, we actually engage with them to actually co-design and co-produce some of our models of care.
Councillor Spate, would you like a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. I was going to touch on briefly on children's services. You may bring it into your response to this, and then I won't ask another question. The reason I'm bringing this, I accept it's at a late hour, is that it opened my eyes. Listen, everybody knows in here, I've always got something to say about something. And I walked into those meetings and the briefings that I've been to, and I was quite frankly blown away by the care and the expertise that we're putting in. And the director sat at the back, Mr. Wake, deserves an enormous amount of credit for that, as do his entire team. And it's great to be able to talk about positive stories. But there's another side to it. It's not just about health and well-being. This is a department that has got a can-do attitude, that looks for ways to operate outside the box, that sees solutions, not problems, that says it's better to find one way to do something correctly than let's find 5 reasons not to do it. And my question to the portfolio holder is, I hope he agrees with me that other directorates would take that as a shining example, and that is the way we're going to rebuild this council, by departments doing the absolute best job they can and absolutely being pragmatic, being forward-thinking, being innovative. We don't have that in all our directorates. I look forward to the day that we do.
Thank you. Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Councillor Spate. I wholeheartedly agree. The work that is actually being done by Ian and the rest of his team is absolutely amazing. I'm really glad you come away from that briefing session with your eyes opened about some of the really good work the team does do. When you look at it, when I started back in May, June, here in this portfolio, it was quite eye-opening as well. I had that same experience relatively quite quickly, trying to get to grips. But most definitely, as we go forward,
I think it is the shining example, not only just in adults housing and health, but children's services have done the same as well. And I will mention children's quickly, because when we do talk about children's in terms of health and well-being, it often gets put to the sideline. So there is a lot of work going into that, and it's always, when we look at how we're going forward about some of the really transformational work, these two departments are really the shining example.
Thank you. Before I take question 8 from Councillor Muldowney, I am, as we're talking about health, is Councillor Byrne okay? No, I'm being serious now. If he could put his hand up. Right, thank you. That's all I want to know. Thank you. It is now 10:30. Are we going to do another extension? The advice I received is if I wish to extend it, I can, but I'm actually going to take a vote. Who wants to extend and who doesn't? What, you all want to extend? Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Muldowney, question 8. Sorry, Councillor, before you speak, how long shall we extend it for? Shall we extend it till it's done? To the close of business? Okay, thank you. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The instances of buses being suspended because of badly parked cars on Godman Road and Sleepers Farm Road is increasing. Please can the portfolio holder look to provide and or extend double yellow lines on the junctions and bends of Godman Road to allow the buses to run unimpeded in this area?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Muldowney, for your question. I can advise that on site of your question, I asked officers to commence dialogue with the relevant bus operators who use the area so that we can better understand the problems you've highlighted and also to understand how the council might help in resolving them. Once we have further information on the options that we can bring forward, I'll ask officers to update you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Councillor Maney, for that reply, although I'm rather puzzled by it, as over the summer I wrote to officers at the council asking them to look at increasing parking restrictions and enforcement. I had a reply saying that twilight enforcement would be undertaken, but from Transport Development they said that they'd contacted Ensign buses to ask for details about where the obstructive parking was occurring. As I've received no further response, and I know from Ensign buses that they've actually not only responded to that request, but have made previous requests over a number of years for action in this area. Can I have an update on what action is proposed? And why hasn't it already been done? Why do we need to, again, contact the bus company when that should have been done during the summer, as I understood it?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, as I've already said, I've asked officers to look into options. And again, it seems to be a bit of a recurring theme from backbench members who say they have raised issues and haven't had a meaningful reply, and that's deeply concerning. I have to say, in the last couple of weeks, I've had to repeatedly chase inquiries myself because they haven't been answered within service standard. I'm still waiting for an answer to one 21 days later. The relevant officers are all aligned over there. I hope they're hearing this because, frankly, it's intolerable. It needs to be taken forward. As I say, I don't know. I mean, I'm not there monitoring members' inquiries, but I'm deeply concerned that member after member has stood up this evening to say that they haven't had replies to what are really basic inquiries. So you have a right to an answer. So do your constituents, who no doubt raised it with you. And I think, you know, I speak to the senior officers now, including the Chief Executive. I think you have, you've heard from members that there is a real issue with information coming back to members once they have raised very simple inquiries. That's not acceptable. We cannot continue to tolerate this situation or have confidence in officers when they don't answer basic, routine member inquiries. I will take that issue up for you and insist that you get a reply. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. I appreciate that undertaking because it's not only just been this year that these issues have been raised. And since those inquiries over the summer, Ensign buses say they've regularly asked the council for more restrictions. So it's not just myself, it's not just residents, it's the actual bus company. So I appreciate that you will take that up, and I hope that you will report back to me on that as soon as is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, there may be a good reason why, you know, something can't be done. I don't know, but that it comes back to the point. You should know the reasons for that. You should know an answer. There's no excuse whatsoever for you having to bring a question on a really routine issue like this to full council purely because you haven't had an answer. So I can only repeat, I hope officers are listening loud and clear, because I hope at the next full council we're not hearing similar complaints, because if we are, they've failed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you. Councillor Kent.
It appears the owners of the State Cinema have left this Grade 2 star listed building in an appalling condition. Will the portfolio holder give an update on any action the council is taking to hold them to account?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for your question. Madam Mayor, as Councillor Kent is no doubt aware, the former State Cinema was sold by JD Wetherspoons to its present owner earlier this summer. I'm advised that officers of the council, supported by officers from Historic England and Essex County Council, met with the new owner and his architect in July, when the need to address urgent repairs was stressed to them with the clear threat of enforcement action if this did not happen. Engineers on behalf of the owner visited the site on the 8th of September to prepare a specification for repairs, and the council is seeking an update and programme for the works to be carried out. I can advise Madam Mayor that the leader and I, along with the Director of Place, have a meeting scheduled with the owner next month when we will discuss this matter further and how the council can support the building being brought back into use. Thank you.
Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, I'm grateful for that, but I think there's an issue in regard of the previous owners not doing the necessary work to ensure that the building was kept in a reasonable state before selling. So what action is the council considering taking against the previous owners?
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually think, sadly, there's been a very long-standing issue with repairs to the State Cinema. It isn't just the current owners or the previous owners that have allowed this building to deteriorate into the state that it has. I think, to be perfectly honest with you, the focus has to be on the present owners and what we can do now to get them to meet their obligations. Enforcement action in these kind of situations is complex, and it can have quite significant implications for the council. That's not a reason for not taking them, but there are a number of considerations that have to be made. I sincerely hope we don't have to go down the enforcement route. As I said in my answer, the owner is engaging. He's meeting the leader and I very soon, and I hope that through the informal means we can get the necessary repairs carried out so that the building can be preserved and brought back into use. I'm happy to update Councillor Kent following that.
Councillor Kent.
Madam Mayor, enforcement is only one action and one tool that's available. There is also the possibility of taking prosecution, and it would be possible to prosecute the previous owners for damage incurred whilst they were in ownership. I think allowing people to take on Grade 2 listed buildings, to be derelict in their responsibilities to them, and then walk away scot-free because they've sold it, sends a really poor message. So can I ask that the portfolio holder looks again to see what retrospective action could be taken against the previous owners?
Thank you, Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's certainly an option I'm prepared to discuss with officers. Obviously, there's a public interest test in any kind of enforcement action, and that has to be considered, but it's not an option that I've considered previously or been made aware of. I can only commit to discuss that with officers and see whether it's a viable option.
Thank you, Councillor Money. Councillor Worrell.
Nearly there, Madam Mayor, nearly there. It is now a year since the initial intervention was announced by the government. Can you outline to councillors and residents the impact this intervention has had on the housing portfolio?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Not only is this a good question, but I think it's exactly the right time to ask it. It's a shame it's the last one of the evening. Whilst the HRA is undergoing a review as part of the initial directions, there is no indication that anything untoward has been found. Therefore, on a daily basis, the Housing Department has continued to operate with no major changes or impacts that could be seen as caused by or because of the government intervention. In fact, as part of this review, the Housing Department is seizing the opportunity to review some of the existing service level agreements and the possibility of setting improved agreements. The Housing Department is subject to the same controls as the rest of the Council in regards to spending, but there is an allowance to continue with approvals for housing repairs, as there is already in existence a robust sign-off, and we did not want to stifle the delivery of any essential repairs. If there are any hold-ups in this area, it's usually will always be through clerical errors such as incorrect budget codes or insufficient information. The main impact has really been in the housing development section, in line with the asset disposal drive of the council, meaning a few sites which had previously been worked on as possible new housing have been subsequently earmarked for possible sale. As you are aware, the main direction of the intervention is for the council to reduce its overall borrowing, and with this in mind, the department undertook a review of the development pipeline and its asset investment plan, but again, nothing of significance that is currently on site or in train was thrown up. We're looking to set our capital works budget from 2025-26 onwards on the basis of no borrowing, by using the revenue contribution only from rents to fund investment into existing stock. So to put things plainly, this means transforming homes, lift upgrades and fire safety works will continue to a similar level as currently delivered. And just to finish, I would like to point out that the department is currently making special cases to His Majesty's Treasury for agreement to borrow and invest in estate renewal of Blackshots and Sevier Avenue. Once again, Councillor, thank you for this question.
Councillor Worrell.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. And it's always good to talk about housing because it's often the one that people take their eye off because of the HRA being ring-fenced, so to speak. And I've been asked and I asked at every meeting when we'll get the results of the deep dive. Not that I believe that there's anything there, but I think for transparency that does need to come sooner rather than later. So my second question would be, with a complete ban on all council departments borrowing and the housing development plan at a standstill for the foreseeable future, what's the current position with the right to buy receipts held by this council?
Councillor Johnson.
As far as I'm aware, Councillor, we are still waiting for, to see if there is going to be any change from central government about how they're held. But as we're working at this present moment in time, we're still using them as we were before. I'm not aware of any, how can I put it, I'm not aware of any those particular areas being stopped at this present moment in time. But it is something I can check on because it's a really good question again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the problem is that there is substantial problems around the right to buy. And the biggest thing is, if we can't borrow alongside the right to buy money, we are now at a danger, and I am, you know, really worried about this, that we are now at the stage where we was some time ago when Councillor Spillman had it, when if we didn't spend that money, you have to give it back to the government. And not only do you have to give it back, all of the right to buy money, you have to give them the interest that's sitting in the HRA. So I just wonder, have you been looking at this, or is this something that, you know, after raising, and you're going to have a look, you know, because that's a big, big worry that if we can't borrow and we're giving it back and we're selling our council houses, you know, we're getting less and less stock. We're pulling down flats. We don't know if we can borrow because we've got to ask for special circumstances for all of that. We've got people stuck in flats and in temporary accommodation. If we're not even using our right to buy more temporary accommodation, we're in trouble. So have you taken any action, or is this something that you wasn't aware of?
Councillor Johnson.
Have I taken any action as in have I physically done something? No, but the department are fully aware of you know, the problems we've got with the right to buys and the possibility of giving money back. So what we are looking to do is to use those special cases that we're talking about to see if we can bring the right to buy receipts into those. As I said, we are waiting from government to see, because I think there might be a fundamental change. I mean, I would hope there would be, but I'm not 100% sure. But so in answer to your question, we're going to do more. We haven't done an awful lot yet, but it is something that we do know where there is a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Right, we're now on to item 14, reports from members representing the council on outside bodies. Does any member who represents the council on outside bodies wish to speak this evening? No. Minutes of committees, they are listed on the agenda on the contents page. Oh, sorry. Motions update report. This report can be found on page 67 to 72 of the agenda and is information on the status of motions. Motion 1, item 17. Councillor Kent, do you wish to propose and then speak to your motion as
Madam
printed?
Mayor. Madam Mayor, sorry to that in. Just can I withdraw my motion and bring it back in October because of the time factor? I don't think it will get as much, you know, say as it would have done. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Leadsill, thank you. Right, starting again. Councillor Cathy Kent, do you wish to propose and then speak to your motion as printed on page 73 of the agenda? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This council congratulates the Thameside Theatre, its staff and volunteers in winning the Best Theatre Arts Venue in Essex. Madam Mayor, I'm really pleased to be bringing this motion to council this evening. When there's so much bad news surrounding the council and what we do, it's great to be finally shouting about something that is actually 100% positive. This motion is all about congratulating everyone involved in running the Thameside Theatre for all their hard work, commitment and belief in what they were doing. All too often, we don't say thank you enough. The award won by the Thameside is called the Muddy Stilettos Award for the Best Theatre and Arts Venue in Essex. This year, 2023, was the 10th anniversary of the Muddy Stilettos Award. It's a national award, and this year approximately 77,000 businesses were nominated across the country in around 30 different categories. The Thameside Theatre was shortlisted with 4 other theatres to get through to the final stages of the vote. Those other theatres were the Brentwood Theatre, Chelmsford Theatre, Colchester Arts Theatre, and the Mercury Theatre in Colchester. The award was wholly voted for by the public,
And in the final round, the Thameside Theatre got 56% of the votes. That's 56% of the whole votes, which is a massive achievement. As we are all aware, the fate of the Thameside complex hangs in the balance. Despite this and all the obstacles put in their way, the staff, volunteers and everyone involved in the Thameside have shown, through working together as a community, the Thameside Theatre can be successful. It would be fantastic if every councillor here this evening could support the motion and send their congratulations to the Thameside Theatre on this amazing achievement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy Kent. Is that motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Would you like to speak now, or would you like to reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my right. I'm sure somebody might want to say something.
Does any other member wish to comment on the motion? Councillor George Cockshaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to put on record, I actually took time, part of the portfolio, to go and visit the Thameside yesterday, actually meet with some of the staff, front of house manager, and actually had a tour of what they're doing. I was really impressed by actually their Young Producers programme, and some of the fundraising that they're doing. Absolutely amazing work, and it does show that actually some of the power that is in the community. So I'm more than happy to lend my support to the motion this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Fish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor Cockshaw's stolen my thunder slightly there, because I was going to particularly focus on the Young Producers project that they have there. That started when I was Mayor in 2013-14, and so I've followed it with great interest ever since. And I still go to the performances whenever they're held. I get a special invite, being the inaugural Mayor. And I'm always blown away by the standards that they have there. But even so, what comes through as well is how much confidence those young people get from performing on the stage. And that's a really valuable thing to have in life. It can get you an awful long way. So I support the motion, and I share Councillor Kent's sentiments. Thank you.
Councillor Worrell, do you want to say anything else?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm honoured to be second in this motion. There has been very little to celebrate in this chamber for some time, but finally something that we can all agree on, acknowledge regardless of our party lines. Yet again, the Thameside Theatre has shown that it really is one of Thurrock's treasures and punches well above its weight when compared against bigger, more established and highly funded theatres across the region. Councillor Cathy Kent has already covered the Muddy Stilettos Award, so as a regular visitor, I would like to focus on why I believe they actually won that award. The first thing is the fantastic staff who work at the theatre and make your experience welcoming from start to finish. The security guards are always happy to direct you to the one working lift that takes you up to the theatre. The stairs are by far the quickest option for those more able. Once you make it up to the theatre, you will be greeted by paid staff alongside volunteers from one of the many local theatre and dance groups who hire out the theatre for their own productions. Diana, the theatre box officer, is a Thurrock resident who has worked her way up through the ranks under the watchful eye of Mark Allinson, who retired. So many of our young people have found fame and fortune, and they started on the stage at Thameside Theatre, Leona Lewis being one of them. The young producers are amazing, and Frankie has gone on to work on many professional productions, and just last week Frankie had her West End debut as an assistant stage manager of Cake at the Lyric Theatre. But Frankie has not forgotten her roots, and she is still there, cheering on the next generation and working in the wings at the fantastic evenings put on by these young people. Izzy, who trained full-time at the Italia Conti and then went on to college at Udang, London, she made her first debut on the Thameside stage at the age of just 3. Izzy is definitely one for us all to be watching for the future. I'm sure most of us have been to one of the many shows, whether they are professional shows like the Sellout Soul Show this Friday evening that I will be going to, Or maybe it's one of the first-class productions by the Thurrock Courts Players. Tickets are currently available for their next production, which is the 39 Steps. Panto is just around the corner, Madam Mayor.
Oh, no, it isn't.
I was waiting for that. And already some performances are nearly sold out. Nothing can beat a panto where the adult gags are delivered on point every time, but the children laugh alongside their mums, dads and grandparents. That is exactly what you get, Madam Mayor, at our panto. In such hard times, maybe it is time for us to bring back the offer that every elected member buys a child in Thurrock a theatre ticket for the pantomime. Maybe this is something, Madam Mayor, that you could organise through the Mayor's office. So to finish, Madam Mayor, what we have here in Thurrock is a fantastic little theatre that even in the face of closure is still winning awards. Let's all agree this motion and show our support for the Thameside Theatre. I'm confident that all councillors will vote for it, but I'd still call for a requisition vote on this one, please, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Manu. Manya.
It's Councillor Manoir, but anyway, it's okay. I just wanted to support what's been said already because I think that the Thameside Theatre is a really, really important place, especially for young people in Thurrock, because there isn't always the most to do here. And I think the Thameside Theatre and the complex just in of itself, it serves such like a multifaceted purpose. Like you've got the theatre, you've got the library in there as well, the museum, and I know I used it a lot when I was in secondary school, and like it functions as such an important place, and even in the face of closure, it's still winning awards. So I echo everything that's been said, and I hope that the Thameside can be taken into account more seriously in the future, because it really is so important for it. If it was to go, I think it would be to the detriment of Thurrock, and it would be a serious lapse in judgment. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cathy Kent, would you like to sum up on your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for your support. I think I'd just like to sum up by thanking again all the staff and volunteers that were involved in working at the Thameside Theatre day to day and in winning this award. And I'd also like, Madam Mayor, if I could ask your indulgence. Sorry, I'd just like, Madam Mayor, if I could ask your indulgence through your office as Mayor, if you could extend an invitation to the Thameside Theatre to come to the Mayor's office to be recognised of the award that they've just won. Please.
Certainly will. If you'd like to write to me, that would be brilliant.
Okay, well done.
Now
Thank
to do a recognition vote, requisition vote, we need 7 people. No, Councillor Worrell had asked for one. But if you all agree, it will be a matter of you all putting your hands up, because I'm not going to go through the electronic. Right. Is anyone sitting with their hands down? Councillor Summons? All right. Yes. Councillor Byrne, you will not count as you're not within the chamber. Thank you. Right. That motion was carried and agreed. Thank you. I'm now going to end the meeting at 11 o'clock. But before you all start moving around, if you stay seated till I actually stand and go, but could you also please all take your rubbish with you, because it's not fair when Democratic Services have to pick up your sweetie papers and God knows what. And the other thing is, if you're all listening, is obviously I wanted you all to come back to the parlour, and I have supplied food, but if you do not wish to come back, at least if you take a doggy bag home, because there's an awful lot of sandwiches up there, and I would appreciate it. So Thank you ever so much. If you could like to stay seated, okay? Thank you. Or stand now. I'm sorry, I've lost the plot, haven't I? It's been a long night.